Chapter 1709. Leader, that kid is talking nonsense. I'll go and teach him a lesson. A small leader beside the leader of the Dark Spirit Clan said. Gu San, shut up. The leader of the Dark Spirit Clan, Gu Chung, said coldly. What do you know? That brat is not afraid at all. Moreover, the other outsiders don't even know the situation of our Dark Spirit Clan. That brat seems to know a lot. I'm afraid that he is not simple. Leader, you worry too much. What's so difficult about it? The old man who barged into our Dark Spirit Clan last time had such a strong aura. Wasn't he unable to withstand a single blow and was easily captured by us? Gu San said nonchalantly. Gu San, how many times have I told you? You can't let your guard down when you meet any enemy. Don't underestimate your enemy. Have you forgotten this? Gu Chung frowned when he heard this. He was very dissatisfied with Gu San. This kid was his proudest subordinate. He was going to inherit his position as leader. However, this kid was too arrogant. Gu San's biggest weakness was that he didn't put anyone in his eyes. He knew Gu San's talent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have trained Gu San to be his successor. It was a pity that if Gu San couldn't get rid of his arrogance, it would be difficult for him to achieve anything in the future. Leader, I know this, but I have confidence in these foreign fellows. Moreover, the brat in front of me who dares to speak arrogantly is much weaker than the old thing from before. There is no problem in dealing with him. Moreover, the people of that small city can tell at a glance. Let's talk about it. As long as we catch him, we won't be afraid of the others. Gu San didn't care at all. It was as if everything was under his control. What do you know? Gu Chung said angrily. That kid is not simple. There's a very overbearing force in his body. Leader, what are you worried about? I think you're thinking too much. That brat is just a gigolo. However, the two women beside him are not bad-looking. TSK, TSK. Gu San looked at Pang Liren and Pang Liren with a trace of greed in his eyes. Gu San had two hobbies. One was fighting, and the other was finding women. He had snatched countless women, but he had never met a woman from the outside world. This time, when he saw Pang Liren and the other girl, he naturally had some dirty thoughts. Hearing this, Gu Chung smiled bitterly. He finally understood Gu San's thoughts. In fact, in the Dark Spirit tribe, liking women was not a big deal. Many experts were like this. Which one of them did not have a large number of wives and concubines? For some experts and geniuses, their clans couldn't wait for them to find more women so that they could give birth to more outstanding children. Therefore, for a genius like Gu San who liked to find women, as long as they didn't cause any big trouble, they wouldn't care. However, what Gu Chung did not expect was that this time, Gu San actually took a fancy to these two women from the outer realm. What made Gu Chung even more worried was that the young man beside these two women had a domineering power in his body. This domineering power made him feel fear. This young man was absolutely not simple. What was seen on the surface, or rather, the strength he displayed, was just the tip of the iceberg. Or rather, this young man deliberately concealed it. Gu Chung was just about to speak when he discovered that Gu San had already disappeared. At this time, Gu Cheng's expression changed. He naturally knew what Gu San wanted to do. Gu San rushed towards Yang Hongwu in his spiritual body state. Yang Hongwu discovered Gu San's existence. His target was Pang Liren and the other girl. This was also discovered by Yang Hongwu long ago. This guy's thoughts made Yang Hongwu very angry. Courting death. A ray of cold light shot out from Yang Hongwu's eyes. With a cold snort, a powerful aura locked onto Gu San. A mere 7th-level divine lord from the Dark Spirit Clan was actually so arrogant. He couldn't even compare to his cultivation realm. Yet he dared to be so presumptuous. Did he really think that he was invincible? Big Brother Yang, what's wrong? The two girls heard Yang Hongwu's cold snort and couldn't help but ask. Some ignorant guys are going to make a move, Yang Hongwu said. You guys stay here first. I'll go and take care of that ignorant guy. Big Brother Yang, you have to be careful, Pang Li Juan said. Young master, do you need our help? Xiao Yuanbo asked. At this time, Xiao Yuanbo and everyone in the entire Enlu city had already regarded Yang Hongwu as their backbone. Yang Hongwu had completely become their leader. Xiao Yuanbo was not a fool. At this time, if something happened to Yang Hongwu, they would have no chance. He only knew about the Dark Spirit clan from ancient books. However, he did not know the specific situation at all. However, he knew that the Dark Spirit clan was very terrifying. It was rumored that the Dark Spirit clan could kill cultivators above their level. For ordinary cultivators, the Dark Spirit clan was their nightmare. If they were in the same realm, the Dark Spirit clan was definitely an invincible existence. Therefore, he knew that if there was no Yang Hanwu, the entire Enlu city would probably be completely wiped out by the Dark Spirit clan. Whether Enlu city could survive or not, the key point was whether they could survive or not. It all depended on Yang Hongwu, the young master. Yes, young master. Although our strength is not very good, we can still help young master do something. Although those Dark Spirit clan are powerful, we are not to be trifled with, an elder of Enlu city said. That's right. Let's work together and kill those rats of the Dark Spirit clan. At this time, the people of Enlu city spoke one after another. Yang Hongwu smiled and said, "No need. It's just a few Dark Spirit clan. I don't put them in my eyes. If I can't even deal with them, how can I take everyone out of this place?" Boy, you're talking big. Gu San's figure instantly appeared in front of Yang Hongwu. His ethereal voice came into everyone's ears. "Today, I will capture your two women in front of you." Oomph. Hearing this, Yang Hongwu coldly snorted and suddenly punched out. This was the 10-direction killing fist. A terrifying murderous aura condensed and formed a terrifying Azura killing god. The terrifying power and murderous aura condensed into a physical entity and instantly hit Gu San's spiritual body. Chapter 17:10. However, it was too late for regrets. After Gu San was sent flying, he wanted to escape from Yang Hongwu's attack. However, he was unable to do so. Yang Hongwu's powerful aura had completely locked onto him. The space around him seemed to have been sealed. When Gu Cheng saw this scene, he knew in his heart that Gu San had already fallen into an unprecedented crisis. If he did not act now, Gu San would probably be finished. However, if he acted, he wasn't confident that he could save Gu San. Even if he wasn't confident, Gu Cheng still made a move in the end. He couldn't really watch Gu San die in front of him. In any case, Gu San was the successor he had nurtured. If he died like this, it wouldn't be easy for him to find another successor with such good talent. For a cultivator, it wasn't easy to find a good teacher. Finding a suitable successor was even more difficult. "Leader, save me." Seeing Gu Cheng's appearance, Gu San hurriedly shouted. He didn't want to die. Gu Cheng's appearance made him feel like he had met his last life-saving straw. Gu Cheng waved his hand, and rays of light emerged. They took the form of light arrows and flew towards Yang Hongwu. His goal was to force Yang Hongwu to retreat. Then he could save Gu San. However, how could Yang Hongwu allow him to do as he wished? With a thought, a huge furnace appeared in the void. This furnace was the devouring furnace. The devouring furnace exploded with a powerful devouring power and swallowed the rain of light arrows. Then Yang Hongwu grabbed Gu San with his big hand and instantly pulled him back. Gu San was held in Yang Hongwu's hand like a little chick. He didn't have the strength to resist at all. Spare me, young master." Gu San realized that Gu Cheng couldn't save him. At this moment, he was terrified. Facing the threat of death, he had no backbone and immediately begged for mercy. "Spare you," Yang Hongwu sneered. "You were very arrogant just now. It's too late to beg for mercy now." Yang Hongwu wouldn't let such a guy live. With a thought, Yang Hongwu grabbed Gu San's hand. Instantly, a ball of flame appeared and enveloped Gu San. Ordinary people might find it difficult to deal with the Dark Spirit clan in their spiritual form, but this was not a problem for Yang Hongwu. Yang Hongwu had several methods to deal with the Dark Spirit clan spirit body. One relied on the divine flame, the other relied on the devouring furnace, and so on. These were all possible. This was especially true for the Red Lotus Hellfire. It didn't matter if one was a spirit body or a corporeal body. As long as one had karma on them, they could be set ablaze. Furthermore, it would directly burn one's soul. If the red lotus karmic fire was not enough, there was still the devouring oven. This devouring oven could devour everything, no matter what it was. Yang Hongwu's secret technique, the dragon soul, devour the heavens, could devour all spiritual bodies. This secret technique had long been integrated into the devouring furnace, so the devouring furnace naturally had the power to restrain all spiritual bodies. As long as the spiritual body's strength did not exceed the limit of the devouring furnace, it could be devoured and refined. Therefore, the Dark Spirit clan had always been invincible. However, when they faced Yang Hongwu, it was tantamount to meeting the greatest nemesis. Gu Cheng saw the flame on Gu San's body and his eyes widened. Gu San was actually burned by the flame in his spiritual form. This was one of the most terrifying things he had ever seen. Logically speaking, when the Dark Spirit clan spirit body was in its spiritual form, only a powerful soul power could attack it. Ordinary flames could not burn it. However, under the current situation, Gu San's soul was constantly being burned and refined under the flame. This flame made him feel a terrifying aura from so far away. This was a fear that came from the depths of his soul. Karma. Gu San's karma is being burned. Gu Cheng realized that although Gu San's soul was constantly being weakened under the terrifying flame, the karma on his body was being burned. Gu Cheng could see this clearly. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to tell. However, Gu Cheng cultivated a special cultivation technique called the Universal Salvation Technique. He had only just started cultivating the Universal Salvation Technique. This cultivation technique was very special. It did not have much combat power, but it could be seen. It could see the karma and merit of a martialist. It was not of much help to his cultivation base. Therefore, from then on, he had cast the Universal Salvation Technique aside. What he did not expect was that at this time, he could see some clues about the flame through the Universal Salvation Technique. There was only one possibility for a flame that could eliminate karma and use karma as fuel, and that was the Red Lotus Karma Fire. Although the Red Lotus Karma Fire was not the most terrifying and destructive flame in the Great Thousand Universe, it was one of the most mysterious and domineering flames. This was because this flame burned the karma of a cultivator directly. The karma was condensed in the soul of a cultivator and was inseparable. When the karma was burned, the soul would be burned as well. As long as the karma was not exhausted, the karma fire would not be extinguished. However, if someone could withstand the burning of the hellfire and eliminate the hellfire, it would be very helpful for his future cultivation. As long as he had enough aptitude, he would be able to advance at a rapid pace. There would be no obstacles on the path of cultivation. It was absolutely impossible. There was such a thing as chi deviation. This was especially the case for some practitioners who were unable to continue making breakthroughs due to their heavy karma and had reached the end of their lifespan. Enduring the burning of the karmic fire was not a bad choice. However, there were far too few people who could endure the burning of the karmic fire. In fact, there were less than 1 in 10,000. Moreover, the Red Lotus Karma Fire was extremely mysterious. At least, he had not heard of anyone who possessed the supreme Red Lotus Karma Fire for countless years. Gu San, that is the Red Lotus Karma Fire. It is your opportunity. If you can withstand the burning of the Red Lotus Karma Fire, your strength will increase by leaps and bounds. You will break through the bottleneck and become a divine emperor. Gu Cheng shouted when he saw that it was the Red Lotus Karma Fire that was burning Gu San. Since Gu San had been burned by the Karma Fire, it was his opportunity. If he could withstand it, he would be able to break through the cocoon and become a butterfly. If he could not, he would die. Chapter 17:11. Let me show you the true power of the karmic fire of the Red Lotus. Yang Hongwu laughed. If the karmic fire of the Red Lotus had not devoured the origin of the candle demon, its power would be much weaker. After all, this world was very special and the restriction of the world was very strong. However, after devouring the origin of the candle demon, the power of the karmic fire of the candle demon increased greatly. Therefore, it will be a piece of cake for Yang Hongwu to kill Gu San. With the support of Yang Hongwu's Dharma power, the karmic fire of the Red Lotus became more overbearing. It formed a shadow and hit Gu San's spiritual body. In the next moment, Gu San's spiritual body was shattered and turned into pure energy. There was not even a trace of consciousness left. Gu Cheng was shocked. He was grieving with fear. Gu San was cultivated by him. He did not expect that Gu San would be killed just like that. There was not even a trace of his soul left, not to mention reincarnation. Gu San was like his own younger brother, or even his own son. However, Gu San was killed in front of him. One could imagine the pain in his heart. As for fear, it was Yang Hongwu's method. As a member of the Dark Spirit clan, they could easily deal with outsiders, even if they were divine emperors. However, the situation was reversed this time. The spiritual body that the Dark Spirit clan was so proud of could not even withstand a blow from the opponent. It's your turn. Yang Hongwu looked at Gu Cheng and said, "This guy was only a peak divine monarch, a half-step divine emperor. However, he was much stronger than Gu San. At the moment, he was in his physical form. This proved that he was much stronger than Gu San. Moreover, his soul strength and spiritual energy were more than twice as strong as Gu San's. This could be seen from this. At this moment, Gu Cheng realized that his previous worries had become a reality. All along, the outsiders who intruded into the Dark Spirit clan were just prey. However, this time, the prey was too strong. It was even more terrifying than the hunters. It was a threat to their entire clan, the Dark Spirit clan. If they didn't handle it well, this branch of the Dark Astral clan would be exterminated. "You're from the Outer Realm, aren't you?" Gu Cheng said. "It was Gu San's fault just now. I apologize to you here." As the saying goes, one does not slap a smiling face. Since this fellow was so humble, Yang Hongwu did not act too overbearing and directly killed him. After all, Yang Hongwu knew nothing about this world and needed a guide. The Dark Spirit clan was the first clan that Yang Hongwu had seen in this world. Yang Hongwu did not think that only the Dark Spirit clan existed in this world. Although the Dark Spirit clan was powerful and blessed by nature, it was still far from being able to dominate this part of the world. The real protagonist of this world should be more powerful than the Dark Spirit clan. "You are very smart." Yang Hongwu looked at Gu Cheng and said, "We are indeed not from this world, which is the outer realm that you said. We are not familiar with this place, so we need a guide." "I'm willing to serve you," Gu Cheng said humbly. There was no other way. His opponent was too powerful and too terrifying. He was the most powerful in this branch, but he was very clear that he was far from being Yang Hongwu's opponent. If he wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as snapping his fingers. If he died, their branch would be completely finished. In order to protect his clansmen, he had to humble himself and serve him, even becoming his servant, no matter how unwilling he was. In fact, what he didn't know was that Yang Hongwu was the only one in the entire Enlu city who had such means. The others had no way to compete with the Dark Spirit clan. However, even if he knew, he would not dare to take such a risk. "Very good." Yang Hongwu nodded with satisfaction. "First, tell me, what world is this?" Yang Hongwu had no idea about this special and mysterious world. "This is the Dark Night Continent," Gu Cheng said. "The Dark Night Continent?" Yang Hongwu narrowed his eyes. The Dark Night Continent was probably only a part of this universe. However, the Dark Night Continent wasn't the most powerful spatial world in this world. In other words, the Dark Night Continent was like a branch of the 13 divine realms in the divine realm. It was just a part of it. "How big is the Dark Night Continent? What is the most powerful force?" Yang Hongwu asked. "I don't know how big the Dark Night Continent is," Gu Cheng said, "but the most powerful clan in the Dark Night Continent is the Dark Night clan." "The Dark Night clan?" Yang Hongwu's eyes flashed with a cold light. "What does the Dark Night clan look like? What's the difference between them and the Dark Elf clan?" "There isn't much difference between the Anya clan and our Dark Elf clan. However, the strength of the Anya clan increases greatly at night. Moreover, the lifespan of the Anya clan is much longer than that of our Dark Elf clan. In the same realm, the physique of the Anya clan is much stronger than ours." Gu Cheng said. "Are there any other clans?" Yang Hongwu asked. Gu Cheng shook his head and said, "No, there are only the Dark Elf clan and the Dark Knight clan in the entire Dark Knight continent." The Dark Elf clan occupies 20% of the continent, while the Dark Knight clan occupies 80% of the continent. Yang Hongwu did not believe it. In this world, Yang Hongwu felt three origin forces. Yang Hongwu knew that the Dark Elf clan was more powerful than the Dark Elf clan. Yang Hongwu guessed that the Dark Knight clan was more powerful than the Dark Elf clan. However, there was another one that was the most powerful. The origin force was like the sun. It was the most powerful origin force in this world. Moreover, this origin force was completely opposite to the origin force of the Dark Elf clan and the Dark Knight clan. This surprised Yang Hongwu. "Don't you have enemies?" Yang Hongwu asked. Gu Cheng shook his head and said, "No, but 1,000,000 years ago, the Dark Elf clan and the Dark Knight clan were actually one. At that time, we had a common enemy, which was the Sun God clan. The Sun God clan was very powerful. However, 1,000,000 years ago, the Dark Knight clan appeared. A peerless expert appeared. With his invincible strength, he killed all the experts of the Sun God clan, causing the fall of the Sun God clan. After that, the Sun God clan disappeared from the Dark Knight continent." Chapter 17:12. Who is the most powerful person in the Sun God clan? Yang Hongwu asked. Gu Cheng said, "Rumor has it that the most powerful person in the Sun God clan is their only god called the Sun God. His strength is very terrifying. He alone is enough to destroy the entire Dark Knight continent. However, for some reason, the Sun God did not appear in the war 1,000,000 years ago. The reason why the Sun God clan was defeated in that war was that if the Sun God had not disappeared, the Anya clan and the Dark Elf clan would not have dared to attack the Sun God clan." When Yang Hongwu heard this, he felt that it was right. That guy, for some unknown reason, had fallen into a deep slumber and had yet to awaken. However, his strength was absolutely terrifying. If that powerful, blazing sun's origin aura was only from the Sun God, then his strength was truly terrifying to the extreme. It could be said that his entire person occupied half of the origin of this entire world. This was enough to show that he was a real person. How terrifying his power was. At least in the divine realm, Yang Hongwu had never seen anyone so terrifying and powerful. Such a person, unless he was the ruler of that world, was the real controller of that world. In that case, it was impossible for him to control so much origin chi. However, this Sun God did not seem to be the ruler of this continent. Therefore, this made Yang Hongwu very curious. However, no matter what, this had nothing to do with Yang Hongwu. His current goal was to find a way to leave here and leave this world. "I see," Yang Hongwu said to Gu Cheng. "If I want to leave this world and return to my original world, how do I leave?" Hearing this, Gu Cheng shook his head and said, "I don't know, because I have never seen the foreign experts who came to this world leave. Even the most powerful foreign expert, Tian Shang, was unable to leave this world." "Tian Shang?" Yang Hongwu heard this and said, "How is Tian Shang's strength? Is he still alive now?" "He's still alive." Gu Cheng said, "He took over the Fiend's city and became its master. He is so powerful that no one dares to provoke him." "Where's the Fiend's city?" Yang Hongwu continued to ask. Since there was a foreign expert here, he should know some information about how to leave this place. At least, he should know more than Yang Hongwu. After all, it would take too long for him to reach the point where he could leave this place. He didn't know how long it would take. Unless he swallowed all the power of the so-called Sun God's origin, or controlled the Anya clan and the Dark Elf clan and swallowed their power of origin. However, both possibilities were too small. Moreover, even if he could do it, it would take a long time for him to devour and refine the origin energy. It would probably take at least a few months or even a few decades. However, for Yang Hongwu, time was too tight. Not to mention a few months, Yang Hongwu didn't want to wait for a few days. The Fiend City is in the far west of the Dark Knight continent. There are some heinous devils there. They are all unruly and unruly. They kill people like flies. Gu Cheng said, "How long does it take to get to the Fiend City from here?" Yang Hongwu asked again. Since he wanted to ask Tian Shang about the way to leave this place, he could only go to the Fiend City to find him directly. "I don't know about this. but it's not easy to get to the Fiend City. It is said that to enter the Fiend City, you have to pass through the Evil Sea. The Evil Sea is extremely dangerous. There are countless terrifying fierce beasts and evil spirits in the Evil Sea. Anyone who enters the Evil Sea will die 9 times. It is said that less than 1 out of 100 people can pass through the Evil Sea and enter the Fiend City. Gu Chang said with a trace of fear in his eyes, "If the Evil Sea wasn't too dangerous, the Fiend City wouldn't have existed for so long. It would have been razed to the ground by the Anya clan and the Dark Elf clan. After all, it was an uncontrollable force. Moreover, those who took him were their enemies. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't tolerate it. You don't have to worry about this. I can let your clansmen go, but you have to take me to the Fiend City." Yang Hongwu said. Hearing this, Gu Cheng laughed bitterly. He made a smile that was uglier than crying and said, "I'm willing to serve you." He had no room to refuse if he didn't want his clansmen to be killed. He was very clear about the savagery of the extraterritorial people. Although most of the extraterritorial people looked powerful, their fighting strength was low. However, that was only a part of them. The other part was very savage and terrifying. Those people were extremely powerful and ferocious. Just like the extraterritorial demon, god Tian Shang. "Brother Yang Hongwu, are you going to let him go just like that?" Pang Liren said after seeing that Yang Hongwu had finished asking. "Isn't this too easy for them? Don't you want to leave here?" Yang Hongwu said, "The most important thing now is to find a way to go back to the divine realm. For me, as long as I'm with Brother Yang, anywhere is good." Pang Liren smiled like a flower. She looked at Yang Hongwu and said, "However, since Brother Yang said that we should go back as soon as possible, then we should go back as soon as possible." The next day, Yang Hongwu and the others set off for the Fiend City. They set off from the east of the Fiend City. To get to the Fiend City, they had to cross more than half of the Dark Knight continent. Therefore, the journey was very long. Moreover, there was no teleportation formation that could directly send them to the Fiend City. After a day, the group arrived in front of a mountain. This mountain towered into the clouds. In front of it was a huge city. Not good. Gu Cheng's face changed. He said to Yang Hongwu, "Master, we're in trouble. This is the Black Mountain City. This Black Mountain City is the territory of the Montenegro. The Montenegro has dominated the Dark Knight continent for countless years. It's said that they're one of the top devils in the Dark Knight continent. It's said that their Black Mountain City constantly shuttles to various places in the Dark Knight continent without a fixed location. However, every time the Montenegro's Black Mountain City appears, that place will be filled with corpses and rivers of blood." Chapter 17:13. "Master, let's get out of here," Gu Cheng said. Hearing Gu Cheng's words, everyone's expression changed drastically. It was indeed terrifying to be in this unfamiliar place. After all, those who seemed to be of the same realm were actually much stronger than them. Therefore, they did not want to face unknown and terrifying enemies. Not to mention, the Black Mountain Old Demon was notorious for his ferocity. "It's too late." Yang Hongwu looked at the sky and said, shaking his head. At this moment, everyone was locked down by the powerful aura of the entire Black Mountain City. It was almost impossible for them to leave. Of course, if Yang Hongwu wanted to leave alone, he could still do it. After all, his void travel secret technique was not that easy to seal unless the other party's comprehension of space Tao had reached a very high level. It could be said that they had reached the peak of perfection. Sure enough, a huge head appeared in the sky. It opened its huge eyes and stared at everyone. "Welcome to Black Mountain City. Montenegro." Montenegro? Looking at the huge head, Gu Cheng's voice started to tremble. The Black Mountain Old Demon was indeed terrifying. Just hearing his name would cause one's countenance to change. Haha, I'm really surprised." Montenegro laughed and said, "You're from the Dark Spirit clan and the rest are actually from the extraterritorial region. Not bad, not bad. I have a good relationship with Montenegro Tian Shang." "You know Tian Shang?" Yang Hongwu asked. In fact, Yang Hongwu was not surprised that this old demon knew Tian Shang. To a certain extent, Montenegro and Tian Shang could be said to be the same kind of people. Moreover, they had a common enemy. They were both hated by everyone in the Dark Knight continent. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. There was nothing impossible about this. However, the words of people like the old demon of the Black Mountain were the least trustworthy, even if their cultivations had reached the level of the Black Mountain old demon. Very familiar. Montenegro said, "He's in my Black Mountain city now. Boy, if you want to see him, you can come to my Black Mountain city." "No, young master, you can't do that." Hearing Montenegro's words, Gu Cheng was scared to death. He hurriedly stopped him. This old devil's words can't be trusted. Once you enter Black Mountain City, your life and death will be up to you. Xiao Yuanbui said, "Young master, the words of these old devils are indeed untrustworthy. If you go in, I'm afraid you'll fall into a trap." Zhang Liqiang also advised, "Young master, I think we should be careful and not be careless." "Let's go." Yang Hongwu said, "Why don't we go in and take a look?" "Young master." Everyone was worried. "Don't worry." Yang Hongwu's face was indifferent, and there was no trace of worry on his face. Seeing him so calm, no one said anything. As for Pang Liren and Pang Lijuan, they were completely blind to Yang Hongwu. They would believe whatever he said without any doubt. In their hearts, Yang Hongwu was omnipotent. "Haha, not bad. Little guy, you have some courage." Seeing him like this, Montenegro laughed, and there was a trace of appreciation in his eyes. "There are not many people who can be so indifferent in front of my Black Mountain after hearing my name, and there are even fewer in the younger generation. You are one of them. I admire you. If you are willing to join my Black Mountain, I can take you as my adopted son and inherit my Black Mountain city." "Thank you for your kindness, senior," Yang Hongwu said. "However, I am a person who is used to being free and cannot be restrained. Moreover, a mere Black Mountain city is still too small to accommodate me." "Ah, little guy, your tone is really big." Montenegro was not angry when he heard this. Instead, he laughed. This kid actually looked down on his Black Mountain city. He was a dignified Montenegro, famous for his fighting prowess. Many people cried when they heard his name, and there were also countless people who wanted to submit to him. If he became a member of Black Mountain City, there would be countless young geniuses who wanted to be his disciple. If he could become his adopted son, he would become his successor. How glorious would that be? He actually looked down on it. A group of people followed Yang Hongwu into Black Mountain City. This Black Mountain City was shrouded in an endless, baleful aura. The entire Black Mountain City was a city of baleful aura. The baleful aura was like a monstrous wave, constantly surging. As they walked, everyone was frightened. Only Yang Hongwu and Pang Liren did not have any changes. It was as if they did not care about it at all. On this road, there were countless vengeful spirits, constantly letting out mournful cries. It made one feel as if they were in hell. Montenegro's clone walked in front. "How is it, little guy? My Black Mountain City is not bad, right?" Montenegro said, "This is only the outskirts of Black Mountain City. This endless baleful aura was extracted from the evil sea." Hearing this, Gu Cheng was shocked. The evil sea was full of danger, and the baleful aura of the evil sea was even scarier. Once one was contaminated, one's body would be tainted and corroded. Even one's soul would be corroded by the baleful aura of the evil sea. If one's strength was not strong enough, he would definitely die. This Montenegro was indeed tyrannical. He actually extracted the baleful aura of the evil sea and integrated it into Black Mountain City. His methods were simply heaven-defying. At this moment, someone carelessly fell into the baleful aura. Instantly, that person let out a blood-curdling scream. After a few breaths, that person's body was completely corroded, leaving behind only a skeleton. Seeing this scene, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. This was enough to tell how scary the baleful aura was. All of a sudden, everyone became cautious. They were afraid that they would be contaminated by the baleful aura or get sucked into the boundless baleful aura. This was not a joke. If they were not careful, they might lose their lives. You guys have to be careful. If you get sucked into the baleful aura, I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your lives. Montenegro laughed out loud. However, Yang Hongwu snorted softly and said, "This little trick is not worth mentioning. It's merely baleful qi. If I wanted to, I could easily dissolve all of it." After saying that, Yang Hongwu stretched out his hand and grabbed at the boundless baleful aura. Balls of baleful aura were like a whale stream. They were pulled over and kneaded into a baleful aura ball. This baleful aura ball spun in Yang Hongwu's hand. With a thought, a ball of flame appeared in Yang Hongwu's hand and ignited the baleful aura ball. In a few breaths, the baleful aura ball turned into a pure energy ball. Negative energy. Chapter 17:14. Even Montenegro was shocked when he saw this. He could not believe what he had just seen. That was the baleful aura of the ocean of sin. Even imperial emperors didn't dare to touch this baleful aura rashly. They were afraid that they would be corroded by this terrifying baleful aura. However, this foreign realm youth was actually able to resolve this baleful aura so easily. Moreover, he was even able to turn this baleful aura into pure energy. The amount was too unexpected and shocking for him. No wonder the young man was fearless and dared to enter his Black Mountain city without batting an eyelid. It turned out that he had such a technique. The young man probably had many powerful trump cards. This made Montenegro more and more interested. Just the technique that he had just shown made Montenegro want to get his hands on it. After all, if he could master such a secret technique, he would be able to enter the evil sea easily in the future. Although the evil sea was extremely harsh, there was a huge amount of wealth. Not to mention the terrifying evil qi, it was a treasure. Rumor had it that there were countless secret treasures in the depths of the evil sea. There were also many incomparably precious treasures. Every single one of them was priceless. Rumor had it that there was a mysterious door in the depths of the evil sea. The mysterious door was said to be the inheritance left behind by the sun god. Who was the sun god? It was said that he was the most powerful existence in the entire Dark Knight mainland. It was said that the sun god had opened up the entire Dark Knight mainland. Therefore, whoever could obtain the inheritance of the sun god would obtain the entire Dark Knight mainland. However, the possibility of this happening was too small. The evil sea was too dangerous. No one had ever been able to enter the depths of the evil sea. It was not easy to enter the evil sea. Firstly, the first problem was to be able to withstand the evil qi in the evil sea. The evil qi was extremely terrifying. Even an emperor might not be able to withstand it. This was only the first problem. There were countless unknown difficulties ahead. The seawater of the evil sea was extremely terrifying. On the surface, it was not a big deal. However, once one entered the depths of the evil sea, the seawater was like a deadly poison. It was even more terrifying than the evil qi. It could easily melt a cultivator and turn him into pure energy. Moreover, the deeper one went, the more corrosive the seawater was. Of course, there was also a huge pressure. Even if one had a treasure to protect himself, it would be difficult to withstand the terrifying pressure. Montenegro thought that since the young man could easily refine the evil qi and neutralize the corrosive power of the evil qi, could he neutralize the other forces in the evil sea as well? Moreover, the young man was from the extraterritorial region, just like Tian Shang. They knew each other, but that did not mean that their relationship was good. In fact, Tian Shang was able to become the owner of the entire Demon City by himself. Tian Shang had become the owner. The cultivation of the young man in front of him was not high. He was only a Sir God. He was not even a divine emperor. However, he could dissolve the baleful aura. One had to know that it was very difficult for an imperial emperor to resist the baleful aura. However, Yang Hongwu could do it easily. He was a warrior in the Divine Lord realm. Therefore, Montenegro guessed that the extraterritorial region people must have a special secret technique that could resist the power of the evil sea. He even guessed that the sun god, who opened up this space and the evil sea, was also from the extraterritorial region. Or it could be said that the sun god, Tian Shang, and the young man in front of him had a blood connection. Therefore, they could resist the corrosion of the evil sea. Regardless of whether that was the case, if he could grasp the secret, He would have the opportunity to obtain the secret of the evil sea and obtain the inheritance of the sun god. Who was the sun god? The real sun god was extremely powerful. He was the creator of this world. In other words, he was the god of creation. Everyone in the entire Dark Knight continent was his people. However, this god of creation didn't seem to care much about his own people. His true inheritance wasn't for his children, but for his clansmen who came from the same place as him. Little brother, you have good means. You can swallow and refine the evil chi. You should know that even I have no way to refine the evil chi. Montenegro looked at Yang Hongwu, and his tone became very enthusiastic. Such a change stunned everyone, especially Gu Cheng. He was so surprised that he could not believe what he was seeing. Who was Montenegro? He was a demon who killed people without batting an eyelid. Many people had died in his hands. Even the supreme expert of the Anya clan, the Dark Knight demon god, might not be able to make the Black Mountain old demon behave in such a manner. However, a young man from the extraterritorial realm in the Sir God realm was able to receive such respect. He was shocked. However, Yang Hongwu did not say anything. He still treated Montenegro as a stranger. Because for Yang Hongwu, Montenegro was an enemy. It was impossible for him and Montenegro to become friends. There was a force in Montenegro's body that made the demon veins in his body restless. His demonic patterns had already fused into his body and hadn't appeared for a long time. However, Yang Hongwu didn't expect that after meeting the Black Mountain old demon, the demonic patterns in his body would show signs of appearing again. This was something that Yang Hongwu hadn't expected. Therefore, Yang Hongwu guessed that there was something in Montenegro's body that was attracting his demon veins. It should be known that the demon veins in his body were the most ancient and primitive power of the demon Tao. It could even be said to be the supreme demon. It was the power of the myriad demon ancestor. Chapter 17:15. Yang Hongwu was also very curious about the power in his body. There seemed to be a lot of opposing forces that were supposed to be completely opposite and extremely extreme. However, they seemed to be able to fuse together perfectly. This was what made Yang Hongwu feel very strange. However, for the time being, he could not figure it out himself. Only when his strength continued to improve would he find out what was going on one day. What made Yang Hongwu even more curious was the power in Montenegro's body. Montenegro. This guy's demonic power could actually trigger the demon inscriptions in his body. This surprised Yang Hongwu. Since this guy's power could trigger changes in the demon inscriptions in his body, if he could get rid of this guy, his cultivation might increase by a level. He might even be able to break through the bottleneck of the Sir God realm and enter the Divine Emperor realm. However, Yang Hongwu was also worried about something. He was afraid that if he killed this guy and devoured his power to increase his cultivation, his demonic power would increase greatly. In that case, it would be a little troublesome. Yang Hongwu did not want to become a demon. Of course, if it was a last resort, it was not a big deal to become a demon. After all, the most important thing for him now was to leave the so-called Dark Knight continent, leave this macro world, and return to the divine realm. However, it was very difficult to leave this place. In particular, Yang Hongwu could not figure out the origin power of this world. At least, there was no way to figure out the origin limit of this world in a short time. It's just a small trick. It's not worth mentioning. Yang Hongwu said indifferently in response to Montenegro's words. Montenegro's face darkened. What small trick? Wasn't he mocking him? If that was a small trick, what was he doing? However, although Montenegro was very angry and dissatisfied, he did not say out loud, "Little brother, you're too modest. Little brother, can you tell me the secret method of refining the evil chi? If possible, I am willing to pay any price in exchange for it." Montenegro looked at Yang Hongwu and said, his eyes full of hope, "It would be very difficult to snatch this secret skill by force." Who knew what kind of trump card this kid had? If Montenegro didn't have enough confidence, he wouldn't want to fall out with Yang Hongwu. After all, this brat gave him a very strange feeling. Even though his cultivation was much higher than this brat's, he could still feel the terrifying power hidden in this brat's body. He had a very uneasy feeling. If that wasn't the case, the Montenegro wouldn't have been so easy to deal with and would have already taken action. Big Brother Yang, this secret technique definitely can't be leaked to outsiders. Before Yang Hongwu could even open his mouth to speak, Pang Liren spoke up. Old man, if you want this secret technique, then you must be dreaming. Huh? Yang Hongwu laughed. It was very interesting to see Montenegro's embarrassed and angry expression, but he didn't dare to vent his anger. Little brother, I am very sincere. If you are willing to teach it to me, I am willing to support you and make you the Deputy City Lord of Black Mountain City. You will be on equal footing with me. Montenegro said. Previously, he was an adopted son, but now he changed his mind and became the Deputy City Lord. He would be on equal footing with him. However, the price was not small. Even Gu Cheng and the others were very surprised. The strength of Black Mountain City was imaginable. Although Montenegro's words weren't very trustworthy, they could be trusted in this special situation. After all, there was a special oath in the Dark Knight continent. Once a contract was formed, the oath would be violated. The words of the Great Path could not be disobeyed. Once disobeyed, no matter how strong one would suffer the backlash of the Great Path. Not to mention Montenegro. Even the peerless experts who were stronger than Montenegro wouldn't be able to withstand such a backlash. Even the legendary Sun God couldn't do it. I said that I don't like to be restrained. Moreover, Black Mountain City is too small to accommodate me, Yang Hongwu said again. What do you want in exchange for the secret technique? Montenegro asked. In fact, the Black Mountain Old Demon had a plan in mind. He could make Yang Hongwu the Deputy City Lord. However, after he became the Deputy City Lord, he would no longer have the final say on whether the others would listen to him or not. However, Yang Hongwu's reaction was not beyond his expectations. After all, there was one thing he had expected. After all, some special people wouldn't be confused by the appearance of power. If he agreed just like that, then this kid wouldn't be a concern. However, this lad was stubborn, and the Black Mountain Old Demon wanted to get his hands on that secret technique very much. Hence, it was not an easy task. Senior, if you can send me out of this great world and leave the Dark Knight continent, I can tell you how I refined this murderous aura, Yang Hongwu said, looking at him. Hearing Yang Hongwu's words, the people of Enlu City all looked at Yang Hongwu. This was exactly what they had hoped for. The Dark Knight continent was incompatible with them. Here, they could feel their spirit chi constantly dissipating and their cultivation falling. Although the speed wasn't fast, if this continued, it wouldn't be long before their cultivation fell to the Dark Knight continent. This was a very frightening situation, and it was something they could not bear. Not only would they not be able to raise their cultivation base, they would even have to regress. For any cultivator, this was a nightmare. Watching one's cultivation base regress was even more unbearable than death. Montenegro was speechless when he heard this. Leaving the Dark Knight continent and returning to his original extraterritorial world wasn't an easy task. Over the years, many people had entered the Dark Knight continent from the extraterritorial world. Moreover, there was no lack of people as powerful as Tian Shan. However, even they hadn't found the passage to leave the Dark Knight continent and return to their original extraterritorial world. As early as when the Sun God disappeared, the world space of the entire Dark Knight continent had been sealed. One could only enter here and not leave. Unless one's strength surpassed that of the Sun God. Only then could he do so. However, what was the Sun God's strength then? How many people in this world, or even in the myriad of worlds, could reach that level? However, he couldn't say this out loud. Chapter 17:16. It's not that there's no way. Montenegro pretended to ponder for a long time, then looked at Yang Hongwu and said, It's just that the price is too high. Even I can't bear it. However, it shouldn't be a problem for you. What's the price? Yang Hongwu asked. An emperor warrior has to use all of his cultivation to open the passage. Montenegro said, Only an emperor warrior is willing to use all of his cultivation and give up his life to open the passage. Moreover, it's only a possibility, not a certainty. In fact, a real emperor warrior was very powerful and terrifying. In the Dark Knight continent, how many emperor warriors were there? Moreover, How could an expert at the Imperial Monarch realm possibly exhaust all his cultivation and even give up his life to open a passageway that led to the outer realm? Moreover, even if an Emperor warrior was willing to do so, would anyone else in the Dark Knight continent be willing to do so? Therefore, Montenegro said this. In fact, this was just something he made up. In his opinion, if one really wanted to leave this world, one's cultivation had to reach the level of the sun god. Even if one couldn't reach that level, one couldn't be too weak. Only then would one be able to open the seal of the sun god and leave this world. Of course, there was another way, which was to find the treasure of the sun god. It was said that in the deepest part of the evil sea, there was a supreme seal. Entering the supreme seal meant entering the place of inheritance of the sun god. If one could obtain the inheritance of the sun god there, they would be able to obtain it. If one could obtain the inheritance of the sun god, one might be able to find a way to open the passage and enter other spaces. However, the Black Mountain Old Demon wouldn't tell anyone about this. If word got out that this guy had some trump card and left his Black Mountain city to search for the inheritance of the sun god in the depths of the evil ocean, wouldn't the Black Mountain Old Demon suffer a big loss? As an old demon, an overlord, he absolutely wouldn't allow such a thing to happen. Therefore, what he needed to do now was to completely control the young man in front of him. As long as he could obtain the secret technique on him, he would be able to die. At that time, he would kill everyone in this group. As an old demon, he still had some means. As long as it didn't endanger his life, he could give up everything else. Montenegro was able to stand tall in the Dark Knight continent because of his means. He was willing to give up everything to achieve his goal. Yang Hongwu frowned slightly. Of course, he didn't think that the Black Mountain Old Demon was telling the truth. It was impossible for everything the old demon said to be true. However, it wasn't all lies either. Only 30% of the truth and 70% of the lies could make people believe it. According to the old devil, a sovereign emperor expert had to sacrifice his life to open the passageway. This seemed impossible. However, there was one thing that was certain. It was extremely difficult to open the passageway. It was extraordinarily difficult. Another thing was that the old demon wanted to scheme against him. He wanted to get his secret method and prevent him from leaving. Another thing was that the old demon might even attack him once he got his hands on the secret method. This was a very normal thing. Everything was within Yang Hongwu's expectations. However, the old demon's plan would never go as he wished. Is there no other way? Yang Hongwu asked. Montenegro shook his head and said, there is no other way. Of course, unless you can find the sun god and ask him to take action. Rumor has it that the sun god is the most powerful expert in the Dark Knight continent. Rumor has it that the Dark Knight continent was created by him. It's very easy to open a passage. In fact, rumor has it that the reason the Dark Knight continent is isolated from the other planes is because the sun god has sealed off the entire Dark Knight continent. In that case, you have no other way? Yang Hongwu said, then we don't have to stay any longer. Yang Hongwu suddenly stopped in his tracks. Hearing Yang Hongwu's words, Montenegro was stunned. This wasn't right. Why was this guy leaving? Little brother, are you afraid? Are you worried that I'll attack you? Montenegro said to Yang Hongwu. Don't tell me that as a fellow countryman of the Heaven Pain Demon God, you don't even have this bit of courage? If you don't even have this bit of courage, then don't even think about opening the passage back to the outer realm. That's impossible. Really? Montenegro's tone was full of sarcasm. This was a provocation. Yang Hongwu obviously knew this because he did it on purpose. Moreover, he knew very well that even if he wanted to leave now, Montenegro wouldn't let him go. Montenegro, Yang Hongwu looked at him and said, it's useless. Your provocation won't work on me. Ha, little brat. So you're definitely leaving? Montenegro was so angry that he laughed. No one has ever dared to reject my words, and no one has ever dared to speak to me like this. Do you know the consequences of offending me, Montenegro? At this moment, Montenegro finally revealed his ferocious side. He would definitely not let Yang Hongwu leave here. Do you want to fight? Yang Hongwu's face sank and said coldly, although your strength isn't bad, I'm afraid you don't have the ability to keep me here. As he said that, Yang Hongwu's aura suddenly became ethereal, which made Montenegro extremely shocked. He found that he couldn't lock onto Yang Hongwu's aura. This brat was too mysterious. He looked like an 8th-level divine monarch, but his methods were so strange. He was the city lord of Black Mountain City, an overlord of a region, but he couldn't lock onto a divine monarch. How could he not be shocked? Brat, although your strength isn't much, you have so many tricks up your sleeve. However, this is useless. I admit that I can't take you down in a short time, but what about them? What about your companions? Montenegro's figure burst out, and the entire space was enveloped by a dark aura. Everyone was sealed in this unique space. This was Montenegro's main body, an ancient demonic mountain. Countless skeletons were piled up on this demonic mountain, and each skeleton was emitting a terrifying and violent aura. Chapter 1717. Although I can't kill you, I can easily kill all of them. As a Montenegro's voice fell, a person's body was instantly engulfed by the demonic aura. In the next moment, that person's body turned into a skeleton. He couldn't be more dead. Everyone's expression changed when they saw this. From his words, they knew that the Montenegro couldn't do anything to Yang Hongwu. However, they couldn't resist him. Therefore, they were very afraid at this moment. If the Montenegro kept attacking them, they would be in big trouble. Young master, help! Another person was caught. That person was instantly terrified to the extreme as he loudly yelled, "Boy, don't you care about these people?" The Montenegro shouted, "Young master, help!" At this time, everyone shouted loudly. No one could resist the fear of death. No one wanted to die. Whether it was the people of Enlu City or the people of Gu City's Dark Elf clan, they were all afraid of death. In the face of such a terrifying threat like the Montenegro, how could they resist? This was especially true when they saw the people before them being turned into skeletons. This enormous shock caused them to feel extreme fear. Yang Hongwu narrowed his eyes. He had already expected this. The Montenegro wanted to use these people to threaten him. He wanted him to hand over the so-called secret method to resist the demonic aura, devour and refine it. However, the Montenegro didn't expect that these people didn't have much to do with him. Not to mention killing 1 or 2 people. Even if he killed all of them, it didn't matter to him. After all, they didn't have much to do with Yang Hongwu. "Young master, please save us. Save my men." At this time, Xiao Yuanbo spoke. After all, the majority of those people were from his Enlu City, and he was the city lord of Enlu City. If he were to watch as his subordinates were killed by the Black Mountain Old Demon, he would not be able to do so. He was truly unable to do so. As for himself, it was obvious that he couldn't do anything. He simply couldn't resist Montenegro's attack, let alone save the others. "Are those people the closest to you?" At this time, Montenegro stared at the people around Yang Hongwu, especially the 2 women beside Yang Hongwu. "These 2 women should be the most important people to you, right? Since that's the case, I'll capture them and see if you save them or not." After saying that, Montenegro condensed a huge hand and grabbed at Pang Liren and Pang Lijuan. "Be careful," Zhang Liqiang shouted. At this time, the 2 women's faces were also very solemn. However, they believed in Yang Hongwu and believed that he definitely had the ability to stop the Montenegro. If he didn't have the ability, they would rather commit suicide than let the Montenegro capture them to threaten Yang Hongwu. At this moment, the 2 women looked at each other and saw the determination in each other's hearts. "Old devil, you're dreaming if you want to capture us. Do you know that?" At this time, the 2 women suddenly exploded with a powerful force. Their hands touched each other and then started to spin faster and faster. At this time, a dazzling light burst out and the 2 women fused together. Together, they formed a person. This woman had a graceful figure and didn't change much from the original appearance of the 2 women. However, her aura was very different from before. At this moment, she was a peerless expert. Although the aura that erupted from her was weaker than Montenegro's, it wasn't much weaker. Although she certainly wouldn't be a match for Montenegro in a real battle, It was almost impossible for Montenegro to kill her in a short period of time. Montenegro saw the changes of the two women and was astonished. Wow, this really surprised me. This combination technique is really powerful. Although Montenegro was surprised by the changes of the two women, he didn't take it to heart. Although the other party's strength was strong enough, they still couldn't resist him. After all, this was his territory, his Black Mountain City. However, even so, you still can't resist me. Black Mountain City suppressed them. Following Montenegro's angry roar, a huge stone tablet condensed in the sky. This ancient black stone tablet was engraved with ancient runes. These runes were filled with mysterious power. The power was constantly condensing. It seemed to be the power of the ancient laws. This power was about to suppress Pang Liren and the other woman. Seeing this, Yang Hongwu snorted coldly. He raised his right hand and condensed a ball of flame, while his left hand formed a seal. The moment the seal appeared, a huge seal appeared. In his right hand was the karmic fire of the Red Lotus. It was constantly dancing like a spirit, controlling the karmic punishment of the world. In his left hand was the great seal of life. It was supreme, as if it was the judge of the world. The appearance of these two supreme powers gave Montenegro immense pressure. Both sides were confronting each other. An earth-shattering collision was about to happen. At this moment, a golden light appeared in the void. As soon as this golden light appeared, the power of both sides was suppressed. What shocked Yang Hongwu was that even his great seal of life and karmic fire of the Red Lotus were suppressed. Montenegro was also shocked to the extreme. He was filled with fear. His power was also suppressed. He couldn't even control the power of his body. This power was terrifying to the extreme. It was not at the same level as him. It was much stronger than him. What kind of power is this? Montenegro was confident. This kind of power, even the sun god couldn't do it. Just when everyone was in shock and didn't understand what was going on, the golden light in the void condensed into a huge token. On this huge golden token, there were 3 simple and mysterious words that were filled with supreme power. War stopping order. War stopping order. Oh my God, this is the legendary war stopping order. Someone exclaimed. Oh my God, I can't believe it. It's the war stopping order. This is too shocking. This is the legendary war stopping order. Rumor has it that this war stopping order only appeared once 10 million years ago. At that time, the sun god was only a fledgling brat. Another person shouted. Chapter 17:18. Hearing this, Gu Chang said excitedly, Legend has it that the war stopping order has only appeared twice in history. Every time it appeared, no matter who it was, they had to stop fighting. Even if it was a peerless expert like the sun god, they had to stop fighting. They were absolutely not allowed to fight. Overbearing. Tyrannical. Hearing this explanation, Yang Hongwu only had one thought in his mind. The owner of the war-stopping medallion was so tyrannical. However, tyrannical required strength. Since the owner of the war-stopping medallion was able to achieve this, it could be seen clearly. The owner's strength was absolutely very powerful and terrifying. The owner's strength had actually reached such a level. Even Yang Hongwu was impressed. This war-stopping order, is it just to make cultivators stop fighting? Yang Hongwu didn't believe that this war-stopping order only had this meaning. If that was the case, then it would be making a fuss over nothing. It didn't seem to have much meaning. After all, there would be fights everywhere. As the saying goes, where there are people, there will be Jianghu. The so-called Jianghu was a place of fighting. Of course not. Gu Cheng shook his head and said, This war-stopping order has another meaning. It is to select the most outstanding genius to enter a higher level of cultivation. Back then, the sun god was the most outstanding genius when the war-stopping order appeared last time. The reason why the sun god had such high achievements was because he was selected. He stood out in that selection and received guidance from the owner of the war-stopping order. That's why he was so powerful and became the strongest expert in the Dark Knight continent. So, the war-stopping order was used by an unknown supreme expert in the Dark Knight continent to select disciples? Yang Hongwu said, That's not all. Rumor has it that the order of war cessation will appear in all the worlds. Even our Dark Knight continent is just one of them. It is said that the Dark Knight continent is just one of the countless planes where the order of war cessation will appear. Moreover, it is a relatively low-level plane, Gu Cheng said. However, all of this is just a rumor. No one knows whether it's true or not. Perhaps only the Sun God himself knows whether it's true or not. However, there's one thing that's certain. If one can become the champion in this election, one will definitely obtain supreme glory and power, as well as receive guidance from the owner of the war-stopping order. In that case, one's cultivation will advance by leaps and bounds, becoming a supreme expert. There's no need to doubt this point. However, it's extremely difficult to achieve this. There are so many experts in the Dark Knight continent, just like carps crossing the river. It's too difficult to stand out among them. This is not only a test of a warrior's strength, talent, and aptitude, but also a test of a genius mind, luck, and other comprehensive strength. If one's talent is outstanding, his aptitude is astonishing, and he has supreme luck and potential, then it's possible for him to become one of the best and stand out among them. Gu Cheng continued, "And young master, you have everything. I think young master has the hope of seizing that supreme position. It's glorious." Hearing this, Yang Hongwu was also very curious about this. However, Yang Hongwu guessed that this so-called war-stopping order selection of geniuses was not so simple. Perhaps there was some kind of conspiracy behind all of this? Perhaps some powerful figure wanted to plunder the bloodline power of these peerless geniuses. Such a situation was not rare. After all, it was something that had happened before. Yang Hongwu had met some old antiques who, in order to improve their bloodline and cultivation, constantly used the cultivation of genius disciples as a pretext to plunder the bloodline power of some geniuses, improve their cultivation, extend their lifespan, and so on. Although the probability of success was very small, it was not zero. For some old antiques who were nearing the end of their lifespan, it was very worthwhile to take a risk. "You mean, as an outsider, I can also participate?" Yang Hongwu asked. "Young master, there are no restrictions. The war-stopping order selection is from the various worlds. The war-stopping order on our Dark Knight continent is just a projection of the real war-stopping order. At this moment, in addition to the Dark Knight continent, there should be countless worlds with war-stopping orders." Gu Cheng said, "It is said that the 3 most outstanding geniuses will be selected in each world. These 3 geniuses will be transmitted to the real war-stopping order by the projection of the war-stopping order. There, they will have a real life-and-death battle. Only the one who survives can really inherit the war-stopping order. They can get the guidance of the real war-stopping order's owner and become his disciple." "How do you know so much? I'm afraid your identity is not as simple as it seems on the surface." Yang Hongwu said. Gu Cheng, an ordinary member of the Dark Spirit clan, actually knew so much. This made Yang Hongwu very surprised and curious. This guy's identity was probably not that simple. When Gu Cheng heard Yang Hongwu's words at this time, his whole body shook. "Young master, what identity can I have?" Gu Cheng hurriedly explained. Although he looked very calm on the surface, in fact, his slightly trembling expression still exposed him. "Don't hide it, and I won't pursue it. Ordinary people can't know about the war-stopping order. How can you, the leader of a small branch of the Dark Spirit clan, know about it? So, your identity is definitely not as simple as it seems on the surface. However, whether you tell me or not, it doesn't matter to me. Yin, it's no big deal." Yang Hongwu paused and said, "As long as you don't betray me, I don't care what your identity is. Of course, if you dare to betray me, you will have to bear my anger." With that, Yang Hongwu's eyes were like sharp blades, piercing into Gu Cheng's eyes. Chapter 17:19. Brat, consider yourself lucky today. At this moment, the Montenegro looked at Yang Hongwu and harumphed coldly at Yang Hongwu. The war-stopping order was too terrifying and too powerful, just like the legends. It shocked the Montenegro, but at the same time, he was also pleasantly surprised. If he could receive guidance from the owner of the war-stopping order, it would be the same as reaching the heavens in a single bound. He had also heard about the sun god's matter. The genius selection event held by the owner of the war-stopping order had no restrictions. No matter how strong or weak one was, no matter what race one was, no matter how old or young one was, as long as one was a cultivator, they could enter the war-stopping order selection space and challenge it. Anyone who managed to enter the top 10 would be able to obtain unimaginable benefits. Those who could enter the top 3 would be able to compete with the peerless experts and peerless geniuses from all over the universe. Any one of these 2 points was enough to make countless geniuses and experts scramble for it. If they could receive guidance from that person, the mystery of the sun god's inheritance in the sea of sin would no longer be as important. Besides, it was not realistic to enter the depths of the sea of sin to search for the secrets of the sun god's inheritance. Once the war-stopping order was issued, the war-stopping order's war-stopping divine palace would be opened. The war-stopping divine palace was the place where the geniuses from all over the universe could challenge it. The war-stopping divine palace was divided into 10 levels. Each of the 10 divine palaces was divided into 10 levels. Those who could pass all 10 divine palaces would definitely receive guidance from the owner of the war-stopping order and become his disciple. However, it was too difficult to pass all 10 divine palaces. Even the sun god had only passed 6 divine palaces in the past. Most of the experts and peerless geniuses from the same era as the sun god had failed to pass the first divine palace. In fact, most of the so-called geniuses had failed to pass the first level of the first divine palace. It was very mysterious. Rumor had it that the trials of the war-stopping divine palace were very special. The difficulty of the trials would be adjusted according to each cultivator situation. For example, the difficulty would be adjusted according to one's cultivation. Another example was that the difficulty would be adjusted according to one's age. Usually, those with a lower cultivation would have a lower difficulty. Those who were younger would have a lower difficulty too. Of course, this was only the first divine palace. It was rumored that the further one went, the more terrifying the difficulty would be. As for the final divine palace, the difficulty would be even more terrifying. Therefore, Montenegro changed his mind after the Giga Edict appeared. Since he couldn't use force, it didn't matter how angry he was at Yang Hongwu or how much he wanted to kill him. During the period when the Giga Edict appeared, no one was allowed to kill. When the Giga Edict appeared, there was an expert who wanted to kill one of Montenegro's enemies. However, when he forced himself to do so, the power of the Giga Edict killed him without leaving a trace. That was an expert at the Emperor realm. He couldn't resist the Giga Edict at all. In just a few breaths of time, he was killed. From this, one could see how terrifying the war-stopping order was. I think you're the lucky one. If it weren't for the war-stopping order, you would have been beheaded by Big Brother Yang, Pang Li said. At this moment, Pang Liren and Pang Li Juan had already returned to their original state. The aura of the 2 women was much stronger than before. Their cultivation had also increased by more than 1 level. Yang Hongwu was very surprised. Their strength had increased so much after just 1 fusion. If they could do it a few more times, wouldn't it be amazing? However, this was just a thought. Yang Hongwu also knew in his heart that this was basically unrealistic. Little girl, you have sharp tongue. Montenegro snorted coldly. At this moment, Montenegro's body was also restrained. At this moment, Montenegro didn't have the terrifying aura of a great demon. He didn't have the murderous aura from before. He was like a supreme killing god, who knew how many people had died in his hands. Now, Montenegro looked like a scholar. He had a scholarly aura. His appearance was also very delicate. He looked like a weak scholar who was rushing to take the exam. He didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. However, when he spoke, he had a majestic aura. Montenegro. Yang Hongwu looked at him and said, "You should know a lot about the war-stopping order, right? The old demon of the Black Mountain should know much more than what he knew, especially about the war-stopping order. Now that he couldn't do anything to Montenegro, it was still possible to get some information from Montenegro. That's right. Montenegro was old and shrewd. How could he not know what Yi Shiwen was thinking? Obviously, Yi Shiwen wanted to get information from him. If you want to get information from me, it's not impossible. Use your secret technique to devour and refine evil aura in exchange." When Yang Hongwu heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. He looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "Old man, you're dreaming. It's just some information. How can it be compared to my secret technique? Do I look like a fool to you? Do you think I'm that gullible?" Montenegro smiled faintly. He seemed to have predicted Yang Hongwu's reaction. He said, "It's up to you whether you want to exchange it or not. I can't force you to do so now. However, I can tell you that the war-stopping order contains a huge opportunity. If anyone can obtain this opportunity, they can become an existence like the sun god and become an unparalleled expert. Compared to this fortuitous encounter, a mere secret technique for refining baleful aura is nothing at all. You have to think carefully. In another day, the self-defense divine hall will open, and it won't be open for very long. It will only be open for 2 hours. After 2 hours, the self-defense divine hall will close. At that time, even if you want to enter, you won't have the right." These words stunned Yang Hongwu. He really didn't know. Yang Hongwu didn't plan to enter the war-stopping divine palace directly from the start. The war-stopping divine palace would only be open for 2 hours. Within these 2 hours, he had to challenge 10 god halls. That was an extremely difficult task. However, in the blink of an eye, Yang Hongwu thought it through. The war-stopping divine palace would only be open for 2 hours. These 2 hours were the time when the passage opened. However, in the war-stopping divine palace, it would take more than 2 hours to pass the test. Chapter 17:20. At this time, the entire Dark Knight continent, as well as many other planes and worlds, were in an uproar because of the appearance of the war-stopping decree. The appearance of the war-stopping order signified the opening of a door that led to a higher level, a higher realm. In the Great Thousand Worlds, many geniuses had never had a chance. This time, the appearance of the war-stopping decree gave them the best chance, a chance to break through the sky and stand at the peak. As long as they could become the disciple of the owner of the war-stopping decree, they would be able to obtain a supreme opportunity and supreme glory. Even if they couldn't become the disciple of the owner of the war-stopping decree, being able to obtain an extremely high ranking in the war-stopping divine palace was also a great glory. Thus, when the war-stopping decree appeared, countless geniuses in the Great Thousand Universes were in an uproar. They all rushed over like ducks. Compared to the so-called genius ranking, heaven ranking, God ranking, and so on, the war-stopping decree was truly the most convincing, the most impartial, and the most influential. As long as they could obtain a high ranking in the war-stopping divine palace's test, it meant that their name would spread throughout the universe. For some people, even if they couldn't become the disciple of the owner of the war-stopping decree, being able to spread their name throughout the universe was an incomparably crazy thing. What was the purpose of cultivation? There was no other reason. The first was longevity, the second was power, and the third was fame and fortune. These were the three most representative things. And with the appearance of the war-stopping decree and the war-stopping divine palace's test, if one could stand out in the war-stopping divine palace's test, they would be able to obtain these three things. Thus, how could the geniuses not fight over them endlessly? The strength of the owner of the war-stopping decree was incomparably powerful, and people looked up to him. Just a token like this could make the experts of countless planes stop fighting and suppress their strength. Who didn't want to possess such strength? Who didn't want to obtain the inheritance? Time passed very quickly. As if in the blink of an eye, the war-stopping divine palace opened. An ancient and mysterious palace appeared. In front of the palace, a huge and ancient stone tablet appeared. There were only 4 words on this huge tablet. War-stopping divine ranking. This war-stopping divine ranking was the ranking of the war-stopping divine palace's test. Those who could enter the war-stopping divine ranking were all outstanding people. Only those who passed the test of a divine palace had the right to enter the war-stopping divine ranking. Thus, for the geniuses of the Dark Knight continent, being able to enter the war-stopping divine ranking was a supreme glory. After all, countless geniuses couldn't even pass the first test of the war-stopping divine palace's test. The appearance of the self-defense divine hall and the self-defense divine ranking meant that in a few hours, the examination of the self-defense divine hall would truly begin. At this moment, another shocking news. Finding a groom of God. She was the most beautiful woman in the Dark Knight continent and one of the top 10 peerless masters. There were countless people who admired Anya Shenv in the Dark Knight continent. It could be said that there weren't many men in the Dark Knight continent who didn't have feelings for Anya Shenv. Even those who had seen Anya Shenv's women would fall in love with her. From this point, it could be seen how charming Anya Shenv was. Therefore, when the news of Anya Shenv's groom test came out, the whole Dark Knight continent was in an uproar. However, the conditions of Anya Shenv's groom test were not low. They seemed to be specially designed to deal with the war-stopping order and the war-stopping divine ranking. The condition of Anya Shenv's groom test was that he had to be in the top 100 of the war-stopping divine ranking. This was the first condition. The second condition was that he couldn't be more than 1,000 years old. Compared to these two conditions, the other conditions didn't count for much. Even the top 100 of the war-stopping divine ranking in the Dark Knight continent was very scary. There were many powerful masters and geniuses in the Dark Knight continent. It was very difficult to be in the top 100. Of course, even if these two conditions were met, he was only qualified to pursue the goddess of the Dark Knight. In the end, it was up to the goddess of the Dark Knight to make her own choice. She had to be satisfied with the man. Being Anya Shenv's groom was a very tempting opportunity. Not to mention others, even the Montenegro was interested. It was said that Anya Shenv wasn't that simple. She was actually the reincarnation of a supreme master. However, she hadn't recovered her memory or the strength of her previous life. It was said that Anya Shenv's previous life was more terrifying than the sun god. Once she recovered her memory and cultivation, she could easily control the entire Dark Knight continent and become the most powerful person on the Dark Knight continent. Moreover, there was also a legend that if one could dual cultivate with the goddess of the Dark Knight and obtain her primordial een, their cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds. They would break through their shackles and comprehend the supreme power of laws, becoming a supreme expert. It was precisely because of this that many ancient powerhouses began to have thoughts about it. Of course, in fact, many masters had wanted to seduce Anya Shenv a long time ago. However, Anya Shenv was so powerful that those who wanted to seduce Anya Shenv didn't have a good ending. Ever since then, no one dared to harbor any ill intentions toward him. Anya Shenv's groom test and the opening of the war-stopping divine ranking immediately caused a stir in the Dark Knight continent. At this moment, everyone on the Dark Knight continent was talking about these two things. Countless geniuses were full of energy at this moment. Unlike others, Pang Liren and Pang Li Juan looked at Yang Hongwu and asked, "Brother Yang, don't tell me you're also interested in Anya Shenv?" They didn't know what Anya Shenv looked like, but they were very surprised to see everyone on the Dark Knight continent so shocked when they heard the news about Anya Shenv's groom test. For a woman to have such fame and make so many men go crazy for her, it could be seen that this woman was definitely not a simple person. Women, especially beautiful women, were always jealous of each other. Pang Liren and Pang Li Juan were the same. Chapter 1721. You're just an outsider, yet you want to gain the favor of the Dark Knight goddess? Are you dreaming? Before Yang Hongwu could say anything, one of the Montenegro's generals said coldly, "The only person who can win Anya Shenv's favor is our master." Pang Liren was displeased when she heard this. They were belittling her brother Yang. How could this be? How could brother Yang be worse than that old devil? My brother Yang is so outstanding and handsome. How could he not win the favor of that goddess? Pang Liren widened her eyes and said, "Brother Yang, this time you must win the heart of that goddess and make her your concubine." When Pang Liren said this, Yang Hongwu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. As for those who admired the goddess of the Dark Knight, they were all glaring at him. Asking Anya Shenv to be Yang Hongwu's concubine was too arrogant. Even a Montenegro couldn't help but feel angry when they heard this. They were too arrogant and didn't put the people of the Dark Knight continent in their eyes at all. Everyone was glaring at Yang Hongwu and the others. If it weren't for the suppression of the war-stopping order, they would have charged at Yang Hongwu and the others. At this moment, If looks could kill, Yang Hongwu and the others would be dead. Damn. Yang Hongwu looked at Pang Liren and didn't blame her in his heart. However, this girl's words were too offensive. It could be said that this sentence offended almost everyone present. Even the people of the Dark Knight continent were offended. Liren, Pang Lijuan, was the elder sister and was more mature than Pang Liren. Naturally, she saw the inappropriateness of her words. She glared at Pang Liren and said, "Don't talk nonsense. Little girl, you will pay the price for this. When the war-stopping order is removed, you will be hunted down by everyone in the Dark Knight continent." The Montenegro sneered, "I hope you can still be so arrogant," and laugh at that time. The Montenegro wasn't just saying this. Anya Shen's status in the Dark Knight continent was really terrifying. For Yang Hongwu, the only way to solve this problem was to get the favor of Anya Shen and become her husband. Otherwise, Yang Hongwu and the others would definitely be hunted down by the entire Dark Knight continent. After hearing the Black Mountain Old Demon's threat, Pang Liren realized that what she had said was indeed inappropriate. However, since she had already said it, she couldn't take it back. Moreover, she was reprimanded by her sister. Hence, Pang Liren didn't say anything else. At this moment, Yang Hongwu said, "Old Demon Black Mountain, you're underestimating me. To me, so what if I have to go against the entire Dark Knight continent? I don't care." Yang Hongwu's tone was even more domineering and insolent. His arrogant and overbearing aura instantly burst out. Pang Liren looked at Yang Hongwu's appearance and was extremely excited. Even many of the women present were infatuated. A person who dared to go against the entire Dark Knight continent was extremely attractive to any woman. The Montenegro was shocked by Yang Hongwu's aura. This kid was indeed too arrogant. He didn't put the entire Dark Knight continent in his eyes at all. A mere outsider with a cultivation of the monarch god realm dared to say such arrogant words. Even if he was a genius, a peerless genius, he would still fall. "Kid, if you can pass the first self-defense divine palace and enter the second one, I will tear you to shreds." The Montenegro's eyes burst out with terrifying killing intent. Because in the first self-defense divine palace, one would not encounter any challengers. But once one passed through the first self-defense divine palace and entered the second self-defense divine palace, one would encounter all challengers. Of course, no one knew the exact situation, but once one entered the second self-defense palace, after entering the second self-defense divine palace, they might meet other challengers. It was rumored that after entering the sixth self-defense divine palace, they might meet challengers from other planes. Yang Hongwu coldly snorted. "Montenegro, who do you think you are? If it wasn't for the self-defense command, you would already be a dead man. How can you be so arrogant?" When Yang Hongwu said that, the Black Mountain Old Demon was so angry that he started shouting. If it wasn't for the suppression of the war-stopping order, the Black Mountain Old Demon would have really wanted to tear Yang Hongwu to shreds. He, the Great Montenegro, was actually being looked down upon by an outsider. However, at this moment, he couldn't do anything. How could the Montenegro not be angry? The Montenegro was a peerless demon. When had he ever bickered with someone like this? Moreover, Yang Hongwu came from Earth. In terms of eloquence, no one could beat him. To Yang Hongwu, bickering was just a small matter. If he pulled out all the famous insults on the internet, TSK, TSK, he would probably be invincible. "Kid, you're very good." The Montenegro coldly snorted. "I hope your ability is as strong as your mouth." After saying this, the Montenegro no longer paid attention to Yang Hongwu. He looked at the first self-defense divine palace and the self-defense divine ranking. To the Montenegro and the others, the self-defense divine palace and the self-defense divine ranking were the most important. Everything else could be thrown aside. "Big brother Yang, are we going to enter the self-defense divine palace?" Pang Lijuan asked. After all, the self-defense divine palace was too mysterious. They didn't know anything about the self-defense divine palace, so they were somewhat worried. After all, no one knew what dangers they would encounter after entering the self-defense divine palace. Humans would feel fear and dread towards the unknown. This was very normal. That's right. "Young master, we don't know anything about the self-defense divine palace. If we rashly enter, wouldn't it be a bit too risky?" Zhang Liqiang also said he didn't really want to enter such a mysterious and unknown place like the self-defense divine palace. After all, this wasn't the deity domain, but another world. In an unknown world, the feeling it gave him was too oppressive. These sudden changes made him unable to react. Right now, he was thinking about how to return to the deity domain as quickly as possible. If he delayed for too long, Her Highness the Goddess wouldn't be able to recover from her injuries without obtaining the Black Ice Minx Knighten. This was the most fatal thing. Chapter 1722. No, we have to enter the Self-Defense Divine Palace. There is no other way out. Entering the Self-Defense Divine Palace is the only way to leave this place and return to the Divine Realm, Yang Hongwu said, shaking his head. How is that possible? Big Brother Yang, what do you mean? Big Brother Yang said that there is a way to return to the Divine Realm in the Self-Defense Divine Palace, Pang Lijuan said. Yes, that's what I mean. Yang Hongwu said, since the Self-Defense Divine Palace can connect to the myriad worlds, then there must be a way to return to the Divine Realm from the Self-Defense Divine Palace. So it's like that. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Only now did they understand the meaning behind Yang Hongwu's words. Haha, naive, truly too naive. You want to return to your original world from the Self-Defense Divine Palace? Your thinking is too simple. Montenegro laughed loudly. Big Brother Yang can definitely do it. Hearing Montenegro's mocking words, Pang Liren was extremely angry. She said loudly, You old devil, you had better be careful. Don't die in the Self-Defense Divine Palace. After all, you're already so old, yet you still want to compete with young people. If you're not careful, your old legs will break. The gains won't make up for the losses. You have a sharp tongue. Montenegro was taken aback. He said, Brat, I'll tell you the truth. If you want to find a way to return to the other planes in the Self-Defense Divine Palace, you have to enter the 6th Self-Defense Divine Palace. If you can't enter the 6th Self-Defense Divine Palace, then there's no way to return to the other planes. Moreover, you'll have to pay a huge price. With your strength, you won't be able to withstand the impact of the spatial energy to return to the other planes. That's not something you need to worry about. Yang Hongwu laughed loudly. To me, a mere 6 self-defense divine palaces are nothing. My goal is to pass through all 9 self-defense divine palaces. Yang Hongwu's words caused an uproar. What arrogance! This brat really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Even the sun god didn't dare to say such words. This brat was actually so arrogant. At this time, the self-defense divine palace officially opened. A passageway appeared in the air. This passage was a flight of stairs with a total of 81 steps. The 81 steps were actually the first trial. If one couldn't even pass the 81 steps, they wouldn't be qualified to enter the Divine Hall and participate in the trial. It's open. It's finally open. I'll be the first. At this moment, a person was overjoyed. He shouted loudly and rushed forward. When this person stepped onto the stairs, his face immediately turned pale. It was as if he had suffered a powerful impact. He really doesn't know the difference between life and death. An old man shook his head. Elder, what's going on? How did he get injured? A young martial artist asked. The old man said, This staircase to enter the self-defense divine temple is actually a test to enter the sect. On the staircase, there is the suppression of laws. These laws can erupt with pressure, and what it tests is a cultivator's mental state. If one's mental state is not stable, and if one doesn't have a strong will, it is impossible to pass this test. Yes. Senior, could you be the legendary old man Bai Ji? Suddenly, a middle-aged scholar shouted. That's me. Hearing the middle-aged scholar's words, the old man stroked his beard, and a complacent expression appeared on his face. The old man Bai Ji was his title. The old man Bai Ji was quite famous in the Dark Knight continent. In the entire Dark Knight continent, he was extremely respected. This wasn't because of his cultivation, but because of his wisdom and his knowledge. In the Dark Knight continent, he knew countless secrets. It could be said that there was nothing he didn't know. He could be said to be a know-it-all. As long as you could afford it, he would be able to provide you with any kind of information. Although this was a bit exaggerated, it was enough to prove the old man Bai Ji's strength, or rather, how powerful his information network was. It was rumored that the old man Bai Ji had obtained the inheritance of the ancient divination Tao. He could calculate the fate of the heavens, know the heavenly Tao, and even calculate the great Tao. This was extremely terrifying. However, the old man Bai Ji's strength was still a bit too weak. He was far from reaching the level of calculating the great Tao. This time, the old man Bai Ji already knew the moment the self-defense divine temple opened. Furthermore, he calculated that this time, there was a person with great luck at the entrance of the Black Mountain City. If he could follow the old man Bai Ji in the self-defense divine temple, he would definitely be able to obtain great benefits. The old man Bai Ji was proficient in divination. His goal was to follow the person with great luck and obtain some of the luck of the other party. Montenegro looked at the old man Bai Ji with a sharp light in his eyes. In reality, he had wanted to recruit the old man Bai Ji many times. However, the old man Bai Ji was too cunning and extremely powerful. Even he didn't dare to rashly attack the old man Bai Ji. Now that he saw the old man Bai Ji, he was secretly scheming. If he could recruit the old man Bai Ji here, perhaps he would be able to obtain great help in the self-defense divine temple. Of course, the prerequisite was whether or not the old man Bai Ji could enter the second self-defense divine temple. After all, they could only meet in the second self-defense divine temple. So it's really the old man Bai Ji. Everyone was extremely respectful. Moreover, many people couldn't help but curry favor with him. I wonder if old man Bai Ji knows how to pass the 81 steps and enter the self-defense divine temple to take the test, asked the cultivator. It's simple. Those with a firm will can enter. Those with great love can enter. Those with outstanding talent can enter. Those with great luck can enter. The old man Bai Ji said. Then, what kind of people can't enter? Another person asked. Those who have committed grave sins and are not mentally strong will die if they enter. The old man Bai Ji had a smile on his face. He didn't seem to be annoyed as he explained, I advise everyone, if you don't have firm willpower, have karma on your body, and have an unstable state of mind, it's best not to enter. Otherwise, you'll fall into your heart's devil. You'll definitely die. Although they heard the old man Bai Ji's words, many people were disdainful. They didn't think that they couldn't pass the test. I'll go, a tall man said in a low, muffled voice. This man cultivated a physical body technique. His body was incomparably strong, like a divine weapon. He was extremely tall, like a miniature giant. When he walked, the ground seemed to tremble. Step by step, he walked up the stairs. Chapter 17:23. On the stairs, the burly man took one step at a time. He was trembling, but his footsteps were very steady. Step by step, he walked towards the divine palace. Although he wasn't fast, he wasn't killed like the previous person. Very quickly, the burly man had walked up half of the stairs. Gradually, his speed began to increase. When the others saw this, they couldn't help but follow. Let's go. We can't let him go first. What if there's some powerful treasure in the divine palace? Wouldn't that idiot get it? Someone said. The others nodded. In their opinion, the first person to enter the divine palace would definitely get some benefits. They couldn't let others get those benefits. At this time, many people stepped onto the stairs. This time, dozens of people went up. Of these dozens of people, only a few died. The rest of the people were not seriously injured. I'm not dead. Ha! The pressure isn't great. It doesn't affect me much. Some people were pale, some were dead, and some were overjoyed. On the stairs, those who were still alive were all overjoyed. At least they weren't dead. Moreover, they had the chance to enter the divine palace and obtain their own opportunities. However, there were also many people who felt afraid and didn't dare to go up the stairs. These people still didn't dare to take that step. For these people, not taking that step was actually the right thing to do. If they hesitated and took that step, they wouldn't have a good ending. It was better not to take that step. Let's go. Yang Hongwu turned around and said to the crowd. Many people hesitated, but Pang Li and the other woman didn't hesitate. They weren't worried at all. They followed closely behind Yang Hongwu. Zhang Liqiang, Xiao Yuanbua, and the others looked at each other and sighed. They had no other choice. City Lord, And Lu City's people looked at Xiao Yuanbua hesitantly. After all, this so-called self-defense divine hall was too terrifying. If you wanted to enter, you had to take a test, and it was extremely dangerous. People could easily die. You could choose not to go, but if you don't go, whether you can return to the divine domain will depend on yourselves. However, I suggest that if you have any hesitation in your heart and think that you don't have enough willpower and confidence to pass through the steps, it's best not to go. In fact, you can still survive here. Not going is better than losing your life. After all, there are many dangers in the Divine Palace. Even the entrance steps are so terrifying. We don't know how dangerous it is to enter, but we can imagine that it won't be easy. Xiao Yuanbua said. As soon as these words were spoken, many people began to hesitate. Let's go, Xiao Yuanbua said to Zhang Jinxiang. Yes. Zhang Liqiang and Xiao Yuanbua followed behind Yang Hongwu and the other two and stepped onto the stairs. Gu Cheng hesitated for a moment and followed. For Gu Cheng, this was a good opportunity. Even if Yang Hongwu wasn't there, he would still go. As for Enlu City's people, many chose to follow, and many chose not to. After all, there were many people who were afraid of death. Wasn't there a place to live? Why must they risk their lives to go back? Yang Hongwu didn't care about these people. However, Zhang Liqiang, Gu Cheng, and the others didn't hesitate to follow him, which surprised him a little. Yang Hongwu's speed was very fast. With the two women, he overtook most of the people in an instant. Yang Hongwu's speed was getting faster and faster. Gu Cheng and the others' eyes flashed with horror. They knew that the pressure on the steps was very terrifying. Although the pressure on the steps wouldn't put them in any terrible danger, it was impossible to walk so fast. It was impossible to walk. However, Yang Hongwu was carrying the two women and walking as fast as flying. This was simply inconceivable. Moreover, Yang Hongwu seemed to be able to help the two women block the pressure from the steps. It wasn't just Gu Cheng and the others. Everyone present was stunned, especially Montenegro and the wise old man. The two of them were the most shocked. Only now did old man Baiji realize that this youth was most likely the person with great fortune that he was looking for. Thinking of this, the wise old man chased after him. However, when the wise old man stepped onto the steps, he felt Yang Hongwu's strength and how terrifying he was. The pressure on the steps was really terrifying. He believed that his wisdom was unparalleled, and his spiritual power and mental power were boundless. Facing the pressure on the steps wouldn't be easy. He was surprised to find that it seemed impossible for him to catch up to Lin Fan. If it was an ordinary person, they would probably be greatly affected. However, old man Baiji's eyes flickered with excitement. This was a person who truly possessed great luck. As long as he followed Lin Fan, he would receive great benefits. What was different from the wise old man was that Montenegro's eyes were filled with killing intent. This young man was too terrifying. If he was allowed to grow further, he was afraid that he would be far from being a match for him. Therefore, he had to kill this young man and strangle him in the cradle. Otherwise, he would be in big trouble. Yang Hongwu didn't need to look to know what the two of them were thinking. He also didn't need to know. Enemies were, after all, enemies. However, to Yang Hongwu, no matter how strong they were, Yang Hongwu wouldn't fear them. At this moment, Yang Hongwu had already surpassed the large man from before. He appeared on the final step with the two women. Taking this step would allow him to enter the self-defense divine palace. At this point, Yang Hongwu hesitated. If he entered the self-defense divine palace with the two women like this, he would likely be separated. After all, the self-defense divine palace was a separate trial. Big Brother Yang, why did you stop? Are we not going in? At this moment, Pang Liren spoke. Did you discover something wrong? Pang Li Juan also asked. What I'm thinking is that if we enter, we'll probably be separated. If that happens, I won't be able to guarantee your safety. Yang Hongwu spoke. Furthermore, once we enter, who knows when we'll be able to meet again. If we can't, then there'll be great trouble. Hearing Yang Hongwu's words, the two women's hearts trembled. Although they also had the confidence to pass the trial, this mysterious self-defense divine palace was filled with endless unknowns. Anything could happen. If they were separated from Yang Hongwu and couldn't meet again, This was something they absolutely couldn't accept. Chapter 17:24. Sacrificial Beast? Is this sacrificial beast so powerful? Pang Li asked, how can we kill this sacrificial beast? Yang Hongwu smiled mysteriously. This sacrificial beast uses vitality as a sacrifice to the great Tao to obtain power. This is the terrifying part of the sacrificial beast and also its fatal weakness. Weakness? That's right. Looking at the two girls' puzzled faces, Yang Hongwu explained, the sacrificial beast uses vitality as a sacrifice, which is indeed very powerful. However, if something unexpected happens during the sacrifice, for example, the vitality of the sacrifice is not pure, but mixed and contains some special power. If the vitality is mixed, then the great Tao may cause a backlash to the sacrificial beast during the sacrifice. In that case, I'm afraid the sacrificial beast will suffer. When Yang Hongwu said this, the corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. The backlash from the power of the great Tao wasn't a joke. If it was an ordinary backlash, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, the backlash from the power of the great Tao was absolutely terrifying. Yang Hongwu had suffered from the backlash from the great Tao before. If it wasn't for the backlash, he wouldn't have to recultivate. It was precisely because he knew how terrifying the backlash from the great Tao was that Yang Hongwu didn't feel any pressure from the sacrificial beast. The green lotus condensed from the mass of energy released by Yang Hongwu was none other than the power of creation. Yang Hongwu had infused a boundless amount of vitality into the power of creation. The power of creation was one of the most primitive and powerful forces. The green lotus condensed from it was full of vitality, which was a great temptation to the sacrificial beast. This was also why the sacrificial beast, which was originally hidden, couldn't be found. However, after Yang Hongwu released the green lotus, it couldn't wait to appear, because of the temptation of the powerful and pure vitality. If this green lotus could be used as a sacrifice to the great Tao, the benefits it could obtain would be incomparably shocking. As the saying goes, humans die for wealth and birds die for food. The sacrificial beast couldn't resist this temptation, so it appeared. Without any hesitation, the sacrificial beast pounced towards the green lotus released by Yang Hongwu. Its huge body could even blot out the sun. Yang Hongwu immediately pulled the two women and retreated. Yang Hongwu didn't want to face this guy head-on. This guy's strength was very strong, and this place was inside that guy's space. If they were to fight, although Yang Hongwu was confident that he could defeat or even kill him, he would have to pay a huge price. Moreover, he had Pang Liren and Pang Li Juan by his side. Therefore, Yang Hongwu did not want to take the risk. After all, only a fool would use brute force when there was an easy way to kill the exotic beast. The sacrificial beast opened its mouth and swallowed the green lotus in an instant. In the next moment, an altar appeared on top of the sacrificial beast's head. This altar burst out a dazzling light, forming a light pillar that shot into the sky. At this moment, the sacrificial beast was very quiet. Its eyes were very sincere, and its expression was very human-like and respectful. It was waiting for the benefits after the sacrifice. This beast is dead. The backlash of the great Tao, TSK, it's going to suffer. Yang Hongwu's lips curled into a smile as he said softly, Brother Yang, you're saying that the sacrificial beast is going to suffer from the backlash of the great Tao? Pang Liren was very curious and asked, Brother Yang, what did you add into the green lotus? This was also what Pang Li Juan was very curious about. The two women looked at him. The so-called sacrificial beast uses its vitality to sacrifice to the great Tao. I added a wisp of death chi into the vitality. This wisp of death chi was perfectly hidden by me. If the sacrificial beast was careful, it might be able to discover it. However, this sacrificial beast was too excited and careless. Therefore, it did not discover the wisp of death chi in the endless vitality. Yang Hongwu laughed and explained. The sacrificial beast used its vitality to sacrifice to the great Tao. However, If the vitality of the sacrifice contained the death chi, it was tantamount to a provocation to the great Tao. This was not a joke. This was similar to the tribute of the emperor in the secular world. Ordinary things, such as precious gems and jade, were not a problem. However, if there was something special in the tribute that had a special meaning, it was disrespectful to the emperor and implied death. Then, the emperor would definitely be furious. In this way, the person who offered the tribute would definitely die without a burial place. Not only would he die, but he might even have his entire family killed. At this moment, the sacrificial beast was just like the officials who offered tribute to the emperor in the secular world. Because it did not examine the tribute carefully, it led to some things that should not exist in the tribute. This would inevitably lead to the anger of the great Tao. It was impossible to live to receive the reward when the great Tao was angry. It would be a punishment, a backlash from the great Tao. As expected, there was a sudden change in the sky. A strong pressure appeared in the entire space. The entire space was filled with a terrifying aura, as if it was about to be destroyed. At this moment, the sacrificial beast panicked. The terrifying aura that appeared in the sky made the entire space extremely oppressive. The terrifying destructive force was targeted at it. It did not understand that every time it offered sacrifices to the great Tao, it would gain a lot of benefits. The more vitality it offered, the purer and more majestic it was, the greater the benefits it would gain. However, this time, the vitality it offered was the best and purest it had offered in so many years. Yes, it could be said that it was purer and of a higher grade than any of the previous sacrifices. Logically speaking, the heavens should have given it the greatest reward for the sacrifice, allowing its cultivation to increase by another level or even a few levels. It was full of hope. However, the reality made it dumbfounded. What surprised it was that the reward this time did not seem to be the one it had imagined. Could this be the reward for this sacrifice? Is it to refine my physical body? Will my physical body metamorphose to the extreme? The sacrificial beast thought. It still had a glimmer of hope that this was a reward for it and not a punishment. Chapter 17:25. The sacrificial beast roared, but it was useless. Under the backlash of the great Tao, the sacrificial beast couldn't withstand it all. Terrifying lightning struck down, shattering the tough armor of the sacrificial beast. After a dozen breaths of time, the sacrificial beast was on the verge of death from the terrifying power. Pang Liren and Pang Lijuan admired Yang Hongwu to the extreme. He didn't even need to lift a finger to deal with the powerful sacrificial beast. Big brother Yang, you're amazing, but this is nothing. Yang Hongwu smiled. Actually, I just caught the weakness of the sacrificial beast. In fact, no matter what kind of creature it is, it has a weakness. No matter how strong it is, as long as you catch the opponent's weakness, it will be easy to deal with it. Everything in this world is mutually reinforcing and counteracting. If there is a strong side, there must also be a weak side. Strong people are often able to grasp this weakness and attack it, using the smallest effort to obtain the greatest return. Big brother Yang is such a person, Pang Lijuan said. While saying this, Pang Lijuan's eyes were filled with admiration. Lijuan, you're overestimating me. Yang Hongwu shook his head and said, however, your way of thinking is correct. If you meet an enemy, you should find a way to find their weakness. In this way, it will be easier to defeat your enemy. However, sometimes this way of thinking is wrong. For example, when you have enough strength to defeat your opponent, you don't have to think so much and look for their weakness. One is when your strength is not far away from your opponent, or when you're far inferior to your opponent, you will use this method. If your strength is similar to yours, you can find their weakness and defeat them. If your strength is far superior to yours, finding their weakness can provide you with a chance to survive and even a way to defeat your opponent. Of course, this is in the case where there is no other way. If your opponent's strength is far superior to yours, and you have a way to escape, then you can. If your opponent's strength is greater than yours and you have a way to escape, then don't hesitate and run away directly instead of foolishly looking for the opponent's weakness. Because when your opponent's strength is greater than yours, if you still foolishly look for the opponent's weakness, then you're courting death. Yes, I know. Because that way, you'll be killed before you can find the enemy's weakness. Peng Li Juan nodded. That's right. Yang Hongwu said, so, no matter what level the enemy you encounter is at, you have to make decisions based on the actual situation. Don't blindly look for weaknesses. Yang Hongwu didn't want the two girls to only know how to look for the enemy's weakness without thinking after encountering the enemy. Yang Hongwu walked in front of the sacrificial beast. At this moment, the sacrificial beast no longer had the strength to resist. However, the sacrificial beast's body was still filled with the powerful power of the Great Path Thunderbolt. The power of the Great Path Thunderbolt was the destructive power of the Great Path. It was a terrifying existence. Yang Hongwu hesitated for a moment, but he still decided to collect some of the power of the Great Path Thunder that was being emitted. This power would be helpful to him. He had once obtained a trace of the power of the Great Path origin of Thunderbolt. Although he didn't know whether the power of the Great Path in this world and the power of the Great Path he had encountered before originated from the same source. If they did, it would be of great help to Yang Hongwu. If they didn't originate from the same source, there wouldn't be any loss. At most, the two forces would clash. In that case, it would give him a way to refine his body. His body wasn't the sacrificial beast. It was normal for the sacrificial beast to be unable to devour and refine the power of the Great Path Thunderbolt. However, he was different. He had the devouring furnace that could devour all forces. Once the devouring furnace was activated, as long as he had enough strength, what kind of force couldn't he devour? Therefore, after hesitating for a moment, Yang Hongwu didn't hesitate to activate the devouring furnace. He absorbed the entire body of the sacrificial beast into the devouring furnace and continued to devour the power, including the life origin of the sacrificial beast and the power of the Great Path Thunderbolt. When the power of the Great Path Thunderbolt was devoured, Yang Hongwu's body trembled. That strand of power did indeed come from the same source as his lightning power. It seemed that this Great Path wasn't simple. It was actually the same as the Great Path in the world he had originally come from. In that case, the strength of this Great Path was unfathomable. It was too difficult to transcend the Great Path. Perhaps this Great Path was a terrifying realm that surpassed the Emperor by several levels. The will of this great universe was terrifying. It was far from what Yang Hongwu could guess. Big Brother Yang. The two women were very worried when they saw Yang Hongwu devouring the body of the sacrificial beast and trembling all over. They were afraid that something had happened to Yang Hongwu. However, it was also dangerous for Yang Hongwu to devour and refine the body of the sacrificial beast. He wasn't worried about whether he could refine the power of the sacrificial beast and the power of the Great Path Thunderbolt. He was worried that he would be targeted by the Great Path. Yang Hongwu knew very well that the power of the Great Path Thunderbolt that he had encountered back then had only been a clone. Therefore, he had been able to survive with his cultivation back then. Of course, that was also thanks to the protection of the Great Life Seal. Without the Great Life Seal, Yang Hongwu wouldn't have been able to survive. He would have survived. This world was even more powerful than the deity realm. The Great Path in this world might only be an incarnation of the true Great Path, of the Great Path of the universe. However, the strength of this incarnation was abnormally powerful and terrifying. At this moment, what Yang Hongwu was worried about didn't happen. There was no powerful pressure in the sky. There was no terrifying aura of the Great Path. This made Yang Hongwu heave a sigh of relief. In fact, what Yang Hongwu didn't know was that in the depths of the endless void, and I was staring at his position, there were also two hazy and terrifying figures beside him. Yang Hongwu knew nothing about all of this. I'm fine. Don't worry. Yang Hongwu opened his eyes. At this moment, Yang Hongwu's aura had increased by a lot. His cultivation had increased by a small realm. At this moment, Yang Hongwu's cultivation had reached the 9th level Divine Monarch realm. Although he had just stepped into the 9th level Divine Monarch realm, Yang Hongwu's cultivation had reached the 9th level Divine Monarch realm. Although he had just entered the Divine Lord realm, his body contained the aura of a destructive thunderbolt. This was because Yang Hongwu had just refined the power of the Great Path Thunderbolt and hadn't been able to completely restrain it. This caused the destructive aura to dissipate. Chapter 17:26. Looks like we passed the first test. That's great. Let's see what the next test is. Yang Hongwu laughed. There were quite a lot of tests in the Defense Divine Palace. There were a total of 9 divine palaces, and each one had 9 floors. He had only passed the first floor of the first divine palace. If the first floor of the first divine palace was already so difficult, then the rest of the divine palace would be even harder. The next test would not be so simple. Thinking of this, Yang Hongwu's face became solemn. This time, his cultivation had increased by a small level, reaching the 9th level of the Divine Monarch realm. If he could break through the Divine Monarch realm and enter the Divine Emperor realm, it would be much easier to pass the tests of the 9 divine palaces. However, this was not an easy task. If he wanted to make a breakthrough in his cultivation, it could be said that there were layers upon layers of difficulties. It was much more difficult than ordinary people, especially now that he was already a 9th level Divine Monarch realm. It was a huge gap to enter the Divine Emperor realm. The 3 of them passed through the portal and entered the 2nd floor. This time, the situation was different from the first floor. This place was like a beautiful fairyland. There were mountains and rivers, pavilions and pavilions. This was a courtyard. In the center of the courtyard, there was a pavilion. The sound of a zither was pleasant to the ears. What a beautiful zither sound, Pang Li Juan murmured. Yang Hongwu frowned slightly. This zither sound was not so simple. It could make people lose themselves and unknowingly fall into the zither sound. Not simple, it was really not simple. This zither sound seemed to have no murderous intent, but it contained infinite terror. If one really fell into the zither sound, they would be in big trouble. The most terrifying thing was that there was no murderous intent. This was indeed the test of the Divine Palace. Clap, 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 clap. Before the zither sound stopped, Yang Hongwu clapped and said loudly, "Good." Ding. Yang Hongwu's sound interrupted the zither sound. There was a crisp sound. It was the sound of the zither string breaking. At this moment, the 2 women finally collected their thoughts. Their eyes were filled with astonishment. They knew that it was Yang Hongwu who had awakened them from the music. If it wasn't for Yang Hongwu's words, they would have already fallen into the world of the music, unable to extricate themselves. The sound of a zither was bewitching, causing them to fall into a world. If Yang Hongwu hadn't woken them up in time, the consequences would have been unimaginable. What frightening music! What a frightening test! The 2 women felt a lingering fear. If they had entered the test alone, they probably wouldn't have been able to complete the test of the first temple. Horrifying, it was too horrifying. In fact, what the 2 girls didn't know was that the difficulty of their assessment had increased by 30 times. If they were alone, the difficulty would be much simpler. Yang Hongwu was the only one who knew this. 30 times the difficulty was indeed scary, but this was what made it challenging. Although Yang Hongwu was worried, he was still very confident. Yang Hongwu didn't know how strong the person playing the zither was, but he knew in his heart that the other party was definitely not simple. This was an expert who had entered the Tao through the zither. If it weren't for his special cultivation method, his strong mental power, and his Dharma eye of annihilation, he would probably have been drawn into the world of the music, unable to extricate himself. What a little guy. At this moment, a voice came from the pavilion. It was impossible to tell whether the voice was male or female, as if it was ethereal. You're the first to be able to interrupt my music so easily. Senior, is this the 2nd test of the first temple of the Divine Hall of War? Yang Hongwu asked. Yang Hongwu couldn't detect the strength of the person in the pavilion, which was much more terrifying than the sacrificial beast. This was what worried Yang Hongwu. Therefore, Yang Hongwu didn't intend to force a move. It would be best if he could outsmart the person. Of course, it would be best if the person playing the zither could directly open the passage. Young man, it's easy for you to pass the 2nd test. As long as you play a song that moves my heart, you can pass this test, the person playing the zither said. It was as if whether or not he could pass this level of the test depended on a single thought from him. Hearing this, Yang Hongwu's heart trembled. This zither player didn't seem to be so simple. 30 times the difficulty seemed to be very different from the usual difficulty. Although he wasn't the first person to dare to take the test with him, he definitely wouldn't be the last. Yang Hongwu didn't know whether or not the others had encountered the same situation, but this divine hall of war made Yang Hongwu more and more curious. In fact, this divine hall of war should be an incomparably powerful treasure. Moreover, it was a divine object used to cultivate one's own faction. Just looking at each level of the test caused Yang Hongwu to be incomparably shocked. Also, this defense god hall was spread throughout the various worlds. How terrifying was the strength of the master of this hall? How terrifying was he? This made Yang Hongwu think of the spear of lightning. In the lightning tribulation of the Great Path, the spear of lightning had appeared. What Yang Hongwu saw was merely a projection of the spear of lightning. Therefore, Yang Hongwu guessed that perhaps this was only a projection of the true divine hall of war. The person playing the zither in this pavilion was perhaps only a projection of a powerful cultivator. No matter what, the true strength of the person in the pavilion should be quite terrifying. Yes, Yang Hongwu said with a nod. Yang Hongwu wasn't a true master of the way of the zither. In fact, he didn't play the zither very often. However, when one's cultivation reaches level, one could master all methods. However, whether or not he would be able to enter the eyes of the people in the pavilion was unknown. Brother Yang, why don't I do it? Pang Li Juan said at this time. Pang Li Juan still had a certain level of attainment in the way of the zither. After all, although Yang Hongwu was an outstanding genius and had extremely high attainment in many aspects, a person's energy was limited. Pang Li Juan herself liked the way of the zither the most. She spent far more effort on the way of the zither than in other aspects, including cultivation. Chapter 17:27. I have a guqin here. I hope you won't let it down. After that person finished speaking, a guqin floated out of the pavilion and landed in front of Yang Hongwu. This guqin was full of ancient charm. The runes on it were filled with mysterious charm. This was definitely a rare guqin, a top-grade treasure. Good guqin, Yang Hongwu praised. If this guqin was taken out, it would definitely be priceless. It was a treasure that countless guqin cultivators would fight over. However, although the guqin was good, Yang Hongwu didn't plan to use it. It was undeniable that this guqin was good, but it wasn't suitable for Yang Hongwu. Yang Hongwu was very clear about this. I have a guqin. After saying that, Yang Hongwu waved his hand and a withered tree branch appeared in his hand. Then, Yang Hongwu took out a ball of flame. This ball of flame landed on the withered tree branch. What was surprising was that this ball of flame couldn't burn the withered tree branch completely. On the other hand, Yang Hongwu's ball of flame wasn't a simple flame. It was a divine flame. Although it wasn't as terrifying as the karmic fire, it was still quite powerful. It's actually a branch of the sweet sound tree. The person in the pavilion said. Yang Hongwu had obtained this branch by accident. This branch contained the power of musical charm. Therefore, Yang Hongwu thought of using this branch to forge a guqin. This was a good choice. Originally, Yang Hongwu planned to use this branch to forge a sound attack. He hadn't been able to forge a weapon yet. This time, he had to forge one. The guqin that the person took out before could be considered a supreme treasure. However, Yang Hongwu didn't use it. After all, it wasn't 100% compatible with him. It couldn't fully display its power. Yang Hongwu wanted to forge a guqin on the spot. This is called the sweet sound tree. Yang Hongwu didn't know the origin of this branch. After hearing the person's words, Yang Hongwu remembered that the sweet sound tree was rumored to be one of the best materials to forge sound attack weapons like yukins. It was extremely rare. This branch was very precious. That's right. The sweet sound tree is one of the best materials to forge sound attack weapons. That person continued. If this section of the wondrous sound tree was given to a good refiner, it would be enough to create a zither as good as my zither. It's just that. Before the man could finish his words, he saw Yang Hongwu unleashing a series of mysterious spells on the branch. The branch instantly changed. It gradually melted and condensed into the shape of a guqin. It was full of Taoist rhyme. Then, Yang Hongwu waved his hand again, and a few strings appeared. This is a dragon tendon. Yang Hongwu's hand continued to move, and his speed became faster and faster. One hand seal after another landed on the guqin. Soon, the guqin took shape. It was a 7-string guqin. The moment Yang Hongwu stopped his hand seals, an aura condensed in the sky. It was the appearance of tribulation clouds. A scholar in green appeared in the pavilion. He looked at the lightning tribulation in front of him and sighed. Not bad. It's a good guqin. Of course, the premise was that the guqin could survive the tribulation. If it couldn't, then the guqin would be destroyed. If it could survive the tribulation, it would be a top-grade guqin. When the lightning tribulation fell, Yang Hongwu held the guqin motionlessly. He let the lightning strike the guqin. In fact, Yang Hongwu had already activated the devouring furnace. He integrated the furnace's power into the guqin and continuously devoured the lightning tribulation's power. The lightning tribulation continued to fall. Yang Hongwu kept devouring the lightning tribulation's power. His cultivation didn't increase by much. Although the lightning tribulation's power was terrifying, it was just a drop in the ocean for Yang Hongwu. The energy he needed to increase his cultivation was too much. The lightning tribulation's power, attracted by the guqin, wasn't enough to increase his cultivation. It couldn't help him break through the 9th-level divine monarch realm. The bottleneck was to enter the half-step divine emperor realm, let alone the divine emperor realm. He was surprised that Yang Hongwu gave the guqin the means to survive the tribulation. Good lad. Good means. No wonder Master values you so much. The scholar in green murmured. It was just that Yang Hongwu couldn't hear it clearly. Come. After surviving the lightning tribulation, Yang Hongwu reached out and grabbed the guqin. You'll be called the wonderful sound guqin. Yang Hongwu looked at the 7-string guqin in his hand. This was the first guqin that Yang Hongwu had refined. He had spent a lot of energy on it. In order to make it the most compatible, Yang Hongwu had integrated a drop of blood essence into it. Yang Hongwu had refined a lot of treasures. Apart from the time when he had refined the Hongmeng battle saber, this was the only one that had integrated blood essence. The wonderful sound guqin. In fact, Yang Hongwu knew very well that the most precious part of this guqin wasn't the branch of the wonderful sound sacred tree, but Yang Hongwu's drop of blood essence. The green-robed scholar could see that as well. Although the branch of the wonderful sound sacred tree was precious, he could still obtain it. However, it wasn't easy to obtain such a good guqin. If it wasn't for the fact that this guqin was refined by Yang Hongwu and integrated with his blood essence, the scholar in green wouldn't have been able to resist the urge to snatch it. The reason why he had such an idea was entirely because of Yang Hongwu's drop of blood essence. Not bad. This is a good guqin. Although it's not as good as my solitary guqin now, it will surpass it in the future. Although he didn't want to admit it, it was the truth. Although his solitary guqin was good, it had no possibility of growth. In front of him was Yang Hongwu's newly refined wonderful sound guqin. Although it wasn't as good as the solitary guqin now, it could continue to grow and improve in the future. It was only a matter of time before it surpassed the solitary guqin. Now that you have the guqin, let's see how your guqin Dao is. If you can't move me, you won't be able to pass this stage, said the scholar in green. Don't worry. Yang Hongwu looked at the green-robed scholar and said. When he saw the face of the green-robed scholar, Yang Hongwu was very surprised. This scholar looked ordinary, as if he didn't have any Dharma power. He looked like he would be blown away by a gust of wind. However, Yang Hongwu knew that this green-robed scholar was not ordinary. His vitality was extremely terrifying and powerful. He had already reached an inconceivable level of cultivation. Chapter 17:28. As soon as the sound of the guqin was heard, a series of mysterious Tao patterns appeared in the surroundings. These Tao patterns were mysterious, full of the mysteries of life. At this time, Yang Hongwu had already reached a state of selflessness and entered the state of oneness of heaven and man. At this moment, Yang Hongwu, Peng Li Juan, and the other two women, and even the scholar in green, were attracted by the mysterious and moving sound of the guqin. They could not help but be immersed in it. Yang Hongwu's aura changed. The spiritual energy in the surroundings condensed crazily and gathered towards Yang Hongwu, constantly pouring into Yang Hongwu's body. His cultivation continued to increase. His aura became ethereal, but it continued to increase. It was unfathomable. After an unknown period of time, Yang Hongwu's hands stopped playing the guqin. The sound of the guqin had already stopped. However, the person listening to the guqin had yet to wake up. He was still immersed in the beautiful sound of the guqin, unable to extricate himself. However, that was only Pang Liren and the other two women. The scholar in green opened his eyes after a few breaths of time after the sound of the guqin stopped. Good guqin, good song, good realm. The scholar in green opened his eyes and said, Yang Hongwu's attainments in the guqin Dao were beyond his expectations. This song actually caused him to be immersed in it. Amazing, truly amazing. The sound of the guqin contained a trace of the supreme power of the law. This was the law of the guqin Dao. Although it was only a trace, it still gave him a little shock. This trace of the law of the guqin Dao had given him a great deal of shock. His realm had actually increased a little. For someone in his realm, it was very difficult to increase even a little. According to his situation, this little bit of improvement might not be possible even after hundreds or thousands of years. However, after listening to Yang Hongwu's song, he actually gained so much. How could he not be shocked? No wonder his master thought so highly of him. Originally, the scholar in green didn't think highly of Yang Hongwu. He wasn't convinced why his master thought so highly of him. However, Yang Hongwu's performance had completely changed his opinion of Yang Hongwu. This young man's talent was too terrifying. At the very least, his talent in guqin Dao was much greater than his. Moreover, he could see that this young man's physical body was extremely strong. Of course, his talent in refining weapons was also very shocking. At such a young age, he was not only good at refining weapons, he was so powerful and so terrifying in the way of the guqin. If he could be nurtured, he would probably surpass Yi Futian in the future. No, he would definitely surpass Yi Futian. Of course, the premise was that he didn't die. Talent was talent. However, there were countless geniuses in the Great Thousand Universe. Before these geniuses grew up, they were only geniuses. If these geniuses fell, they would be nothing. Therefore, although Yi Futian was surprised by Yang Hongwu's amazing talent, he wasn't particularly concerned. Talent was one thing, and luck was another. If one had enough talent, but didn't have a strong luck to support him, he wouldn't be able to grow up. If he fell along the way, then it would be a different matter. Yes, of course, it wouldn't be easy for Yang Hongwu to fall. After all, he was someone that his master thought highly of. If he fell so easily, then he wouldn't be worthy of his master's attention. Elder, does this mean that I passed the test? Yang Hongwu looked at the scholar in green and asked. Yes. The scholar in green nodded. That's great. Pang Liren and Yi Futian were overjoyed. They thought that the second test will be much more difficult. However, they didn't expect that the second test would be much easier than the first. However, this was even better. In their opinion, as long as Yang Hongwu wasn't injured, it was the best thing that could happen. In fact, what the two women didn't know was that the second test was indeed much more difficult than the first. The strength of the scholar in green was much stronger than that of the sacrificial beast. If they really fought, Yang Hongwu didn't even have the confidence to escape unscathed. How powerful was Yi Shuxing's strength? If it weren't for this, Yang Hongwu wouldn't have to go through so much trouble to refine an ancient zither himself. Little guy, you're very good. Your attainments in Zither Dao are also very high. Your talent is amazing. You're the most talented person in Zither Dao among the younger generation that I've ever seen. The Cyan Robe Scholar looked at Yang Hongwu and said, Moreover, when you refined this wonderful sound zither, you also showed supreme attainments in refining weapons. Therefore, your talent in all aspects is very good. However, you have to know that a person's energy is limited. Therefore, if you want to develop in all aspects, it is impossible. If you focus on one direction, your future will be limitless. However, if you focus on two things at the same time, your future will be limitless. If you focus on several aspects, your future achievements will be limited. Perhaps you can achieve some success, but it's almost impossible to become a supreme existence. Yang Hongwu was surprised by the green-robed scholar's words. Was this guy admiring his talent? Did he want to accept him as a disciple? If the scholar in green wanted to accept him as a disciple, Yang Hongwu really didn't care. Although the scholar in green was powerful, if he wanted to be his master, he wasn't qualified. Thank you for your guidance, Elder. Although this was what he thought in his heart, he didn't dare to show it on his face. If he angered this guy, it would be troublesome. Before he was confident, it was absolutely unwise to make an enemy of such an expert. Even if the other party was just a clone or a projection, it was still the same. Well, I should go. You're on your own. With that, the scholar in green waved his hand and a passage appeared. After this passage appeared, the scholar in green disappeared. Yang Hongwu watched the person leave and breathed a sigh of relief. The pressure the scholar gave him was too great. Big brother Yang, let's go. Let's go to the next level. I can't wait, Pang Li said. Looking at her sister, who seemed to be heartless, Pang Li Juan noticed Yang Hongwu's expression. Big brother Yang Hongwu smiled and said, come, let's go to the next level. But before that, you two should consolidate your cultivation. Because the two girls had heard his zither music and the spiritual energy that he had attracted, their cultivation improved a lot. However, they didn't consolidate their cultivation in a short time. Yang Hongwu took out 2 elixirs. These elixirs could help the 2 girls consolidate their cultivation and stabilize their realm. Not long after, the 3 of them entered the passage. A light flashed, and the 3 of them appeared on the 3rd level. Chapter 17:29. Is this above the sea? Yang Hongwu looked at the small island under his feet, which was only a few hundred zhang wide. In the distance, there was a vast expanse of turbulent sea. There was no end in sight, and there was no land. This was a very small and isolated island. There was no powerful aura around, which made Yang Hongwu very puzzled. The sea is so vast and majestic, Pang Liren murmured. The 2 women had always been in Shepherding Town, so how could they have seen such a vast sea? They had only heard of the sea in books. Rumor has it that above the sea, there are sea demons. The sea demons are very powerful, several times stronger than humans on land. However, under the sea, there doesn't seem to be any powerful aura. It's just some fish, Pang Li Juan said. Yang Hongwu smiled slightly. However, this was only a rumor. In any world, there was a limit. A powerhouse, like the Patriarch of Burial Cult, could be said to be the limit of that world. In fact, this was already the limit of the divine realm. In the god realm, there were also sea demons. The strength of the sea demons was estimated to be only at the level of a half-step emperor. Of course, this was just Yang Hongwu's guess. As for whether it was true or not, Yang Hongwu had not specifically explored it, so he didn't know. The god realm was divided into 13 divine regions, and one of them was the sea. Naturally, there were many sea demons. They were comparable to the experts on land, or even more. However, in the god's domain, the powerhouses of the sea region weren't ambitious. They didn't want to occupy a vast continent. In their opinion, the sea region was much vaster and richer than the continents of the god's domain. In fact, in a universe, generally speaking, the sea demons were more vast and rich than the land. In fact, many of the sea races and experts looked down on the experts on the land. They disdained to compete for the resources on the land. Of course, this did not include all the worlds in the universe. There were also many planes where there were more experts on land. In the vast majority of the universe, there was no such thing as a sea demon and a land demon. The land and the sea demon were part of the entire universe. They were inseparable. Yang Hongwu's Common People's Continent was just a small world. In the Common People's Continent, there were sea demons and land demons. However, although there were conflicts between land and sea demons, it wasn't big. As the ruler of the Common People's Continent, the only true God, Yang Hongwu's was the will of the heavenly Tao of the Common People's Continent. Yang Hongwu deeply understood the principle of living in peace and dying in sorrow. If it was too peaceful, then this world, this civilization, there would be no development, and it would be destroyed by foreign civilizations. Therefore, when Yang Hongwu took control of the common people's continent, he would also incite wars, causing the various major races to go to war from time to time. In this way, not only did he have to raise the awareness of the living beings in the continent, but he also had to cultivate some experts who could fight for him in the future. Perhaps the master of the war-stopping divine hall was the same. In any universe, in any plane, it was survival of the fittest. This was the truth of the heavenly Tao. The strong lived and the weak died. This was the unchanging truth in any plane of the universe. If this truth was forgotten, then no civilization or universe could survive. Brother Yang, what is the test of this level? Pang Liren asked. Yang Hongwu smiled wryly when he heard this. The test of this world made Yang Hongwu scratch his head in confusion. Before entering this test space, Yang Hongwu had opened his Dharma, Eye of Annihilation, to investigate this world. However, this world seemed to have special restrictions. Yang Hongwu smiled bitterly when he heard this. Hongwu's field of vision wasn't very wide, but it was at least 1 million feet wide. Within a radius of 1 million feet, there was a boundless ocean. However, there didn't seem to be any powerful creatures on the ocean. The strongest creatures were just a few tiger king sharks. Tiger king sharks were ferocious sea beasts. Although they were not weak, the strongest among them was only a half-step divine emperor. Yang Hongwu did not need to pay a high price to deal with these tiger king sharks. Normally, the test of the third level of the divine palace should be more difficult than the previous 2 levels. However, Yang Hongwu did not expect that the test of this level would make him scratch his head. He did not know what the test was about. However, what made Yang Hongwu feel strange was that the spiritual qi in this world was very rich. If he practiced here, he would definitely make rapid progress. Under normal circumstances, the sea beasts nourished by such rich spiritual qi would definitely not be half-step divine emperor level tiger king sharks. This level of spiritual qi was enough to nourish sea beasts at the peak of the divine emperor level. Because of this, Yang Hongwu felt strange. I don't know what the test is about. Yang Hongwu shook his head and said, the spiritual qi here is so rich. I feel that my cultivation is about to break through. Why don't we practice on this island? Pang Li Juan looked around and said, yes, Brother Yang, why don't we practice here? Anyway, we don't know what the test is about. Pang Liren also said, it was indeed a good thing to practice here, but Yang Hongwu felt that something was wrong. Don't worry. Yang Hongwu shook his head and said, let's talk about it later. Since this is the test space of the third level, it shouldn't be that simple. Although the spiritual qi here is so rich that people can't help but practice, maybe it's just a bait? Hearing Yang Hongwu's words, the 2 women were stunned. Then, the 2 women said in unison, Big Brother Yang, did you discover something? No. Yang Hongwu shook his head and said, but I have a bad feeling. This is the sea area. Under normal circumstances, the spiritual qi here is rich enough to nurture experts at the peak of the divine emperor level. However, within a radius of 1 million feet, there is no divine emperor level expert. The strongest aura here is only at the half-step divine emperor level. How can this be normal? Hearing Yang Hongwu's words, the 2 women immediately understood. Something was wrong. Indeed, something was wrong. In the divine domain, this kind of spiritual qi was definitely the best paradise. It was impossible for such a place to be without the protection of experts. But in this space, the spiritual qi was so rich and there were no experts. It seemed that there was no danger at all. This was the strangest thing. Chapter 1730. Wait. The 2 women were puzzled and asked, wait for what? There's nothing we can do. We know nothing about it, so we can only wait. Yang Hongwu smiled bitterly. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Since there was no other way, he could only wait. Is this an illusory formation? Pang Li asked. Illusory formation? Hearing this, Yang Hongwu was stunned. It was not impossible, But if it was an illusory formation, it did not make sense that his annihilation Dharma eyes could not see it. Brother Yang, is it possible that this is an illusory formation? Pang Li saw Yang Hongwu looking at her and said, I'm just guessing. Is it possible that this is an illusory formation? After all, if it is an illusory formation, everything can be explained. What Li Run said is not impossible. If everything we see is false and illusory, everything makes sense. Pang Li Juan said at this time, No, it's still not right. Yang Hongwu still shook his head. What? Pang Li asked. Brother Yang, did you find anything? If it's really an illusory formation, how could it escape from my Dharma eyes? When Yang Hongwu said this, he was very confident. He was proficient in formations, and his Dharma eyes of annihilation could see through all illusions. If it was an illusory formation, how could he not see through it? Even though his cultivation was only at the 9th level of the divine monarch realm, not even a half-step divine emperor, his Dharma eyes of annihilation were extremely powerful. The Dharma eyes of annihilation could not only destroy the world, but also see through reality and illusion. Therefore, the possibility of it being an illusory formation was too small. However, if it was not an illusory formation, what was going on? Looking at the boundless ocean, Lin Fan could feel the dense spirit qi gushing into his body endlessly. Here, even if one did not cultivate, one's cultivation speed would be much faster than cultivating outside. This was because of the rich spiritual qi here. This was also why many cultivators, experts, and powerful forces needed to occupy the blessed enclave. It was because, even if one did not cultivate in the blessed enclave, one could still obtain more benefits by cultivating diligently than in the outside world. In some blessed enclaves, even the ordinary people who did not practice cultivation had a much stronger physique than the powerful warriors in some low-level worlds. This was the advantage of spiritual qi. Of course, spiritual qi was also divided into levels. The level of spiritual qi in this place was obviously not low. Yang Hanwu did not find any spiritual veins here. Could it be that the spiritual qi of this test world was so strong? If that was the case, then this test plane was indeed very powerful. Could it be that he had to use his Dharma eye of annihilation to destroy this spatial world in order to pass this test? Thinking of this, Yang Hongwu shook his head. If possible, Yang Hongwu did not want to do this. After all, if a person did not have a bottom line, then in the future, he might really lose himself and degenerate into a real devil. At that time, would he still be himself? For a cultivator, one's heart was very important. On the path of cultivation, there would be countless obstacles and dangers. Countless times, one would encounter a life and death crisis. A single mistake could turn one into ashes. Many people, many cultivators, because they encounter too many difficulties or even too many temptations, they forget their original intentions. Even some supreme experts may lose their original intentions for the sake of cultivation, for the sake of treasures, for the sake of power, and so on. Because of these things, they lose their original intentions. Because if they lost their conscience for cultivation, then they would be close to qi, deviation, and death. It's not an illusory formation or an illusion. Brother Yang, you said that this is the real world. If it is the real world, why can't we cultivate here? Is the spiritual qi here fake? Pang Li Juan asked. Fake spiritual qi. Perhaps no one would believe it if he said it. Everything could be fake. Weapons, spiritual medicines, and so on could all be fake, but no one had ever heard that spiritual qi could be faked. The spiritual qi is fake? Yang Hanwu was a little confused when he heard this, but it was not impossible. Ordinary people could not fake the spiritual qi. But what about the owner of this world? If the other party was strong enough, it was not impossible for them to fake the spiritual energy. He could even try it in his own inner world. That's also possible. Yang Hongwu closed his eyes and used his divine thoughts to analyze the spiritual qi in this space. Indeed, everything could be faked, but what about the spiritual qi? Was it possible to fake the spiritual qi? The richness of the spiritual qi might be faked. The density of the spiritual qi could also be faked. and even the level of the spiritual chi could be faked. But there was one thing that was absolutely impossible to fake, and that was the origin of the spiritual chi. The origin of the spiritual chi in any world was fixed. If the origin of the spiritual chi was upgraded, it meant that the level of this world and this space would also be upgraded. For example, if the origin of the spiritual chi of the mortal land was upgraded, it was equivalent to the origin of the world of the mortal land being upgraded. What did the upgrade of the origin of the world mean? It meant that this world had also upgraded. Therefore, in a space world, anything could be faked, but the origin of the spiritual chi could not be faked. As long as he could find the origin of the spiritual chi of this world, he could use this to understand the situation of this world. If it was an ordinary person, it was really impossible to use this to analyze a space. However, Yang Hongwu could do it because he had the Dharma Eye of Annihilation. The Dharma Eye of Annihilation could destroy the world, but if he destroyed the world and devoured the origin, he could analyze the origin of a world. If he couldn't even do this, how could he destroy the origin of a world and even devour the origin of a world? When Yang Hongwu analyzed the origin of the spiritual chi of this world, at first he was puzzled, then he was surprised, and then the corner of his mouth hooked up into a smile. After a while, Yang Hongwu finally opened his eyes. He finally understood what kind of world it was, what kind of space it was, and what the test was. Chapter 1731. Brother Yang Hongwu, please tell us. The two women were pleasantly surprised when they heard Yang Hongwu's answer. Actually, we are in the world of a sea monster. Yang Hongwu said, Sea monster? Yes, it's a sea monster. In this world, you can say that it's real or fake. Yang Hongwu explained. As soon as these words came out, the two girls were confused. Was it true or false? Isn't this contradictory? Looking at the two women's confused faces, Yang Hongwu smiled and said, This sea monster is the legendary fantasy sea monster. What's the fantasy sea monster? What kind of ability does it have? Yang Hongwu said, The illusory world sea demon is a powerful demonic beast in the Sea Clan. An adult illusory world sea demon is quite terrifying and can compare to a peak imperial emperor. However, the illusory world sea demon we encountered has not reached that level. An adult fantasy world sea monster can fight against a peak sovereign emperor? Isn't that too terrifying? Pang Lijuan asked in surprise. How strong is the fantasy world sea monster we met? Early divine emperor. Yang Hongwu said, This fantasy world sea monster's strength is limited. That's why it can only create a world like this. The spiritual chi in this world seems to be rich, but the strongest sea monster in this world is the Tiger King Shark, a half-step divine Emperor Tiger King Shark. In fact, the spiritual chi in this world seems to be rich, but it's just a bait. The purpose of this world is to make the practitioners who enter this world indulge in cultivation and devour the spiritual chi crazily until they enter into a state of cultivation. After that, they will be gradually numbed by the spiritual chi and lose their vigilance. That way, the fantasy sea monster can easily kill them. That's terrifying. The fantasy sea monster is really hateful. But, Brother Yang, how did you find out? Pang Liren asked. The illusion technique of the fantasy world oceanic demon is really too powerful. Moreover, you just said that everything is real. This world is indeed real. It's the world of the fantasy world sea monster. In fact, the place where the spiritual chi is rich is only within a radius of 1,000,000 feet from where we are, which is the range that I can explore. In fact, all of this is limited by the fantasy world sea monster. In order to make everything so natural, the fantasy world sea monster constantly mobilized the spiritual chi in this world when I was exploring this world. The changes in the fantasy world sea monster's inner world are so real that it's difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Yang Hongwu said, However, the fantasy world sea monster is very calculative. Yes, I miscalculated one thing. In this world, although everything can be changed, there is one thing that cannot be changed, and that is the origin of this world. If the origin of this world cannot be changed, then everything will be exposed. If it's someone else, they won't be able to see it. But I can. Yang Hongwu looked at the sky and said, "Come out, fantasy sea monster. You don't have to hide anymore." A fantasy world sea monster at the early divine emperor realm was quite powerful. Moreover, it was not easy to deal with it in its inner world. The test of the third level was to defeat the fantasy world sea demon. After figuring out what the test of this level was, Yang Hongwu let out a sigh of relief. Although the fantasy sea monster was powerful, it was not without weaknesses. If it was outside, it would be more difficult for Yang Hongwu to deal with the fantasy sea monster. However, it was much easier in the fantasy sea monster's world. Human, you're the first person to see through my side of the world. Impressive, truly impressive. A mere 9th level divine lord can actually see through the reality of my side of the world. Truly too impressive. You're a true genius. Moreover, within your body, I can sense a powerful strength. I can sense your powerful blood. The fantasy world oceanic demon appeared. It looked similar to a human, but it was different. It was as if its transformation was incomplete. In fact, after the fantasy world oceanic demon transformed, it looked like this. It was ugly in the eyes of the human race. Pang Liren frowned and said, "So ugly." The fantasy sea monster's eyes turned cold. An arc of light shot out from its eyes and arrived in front of Pang Liren. If Pang Liren was hit, her head would be pierced. When Yang Hongwu saw it, he waved his hand and a light screen appeared in front of him, blocking the attack. Fantasy sea monster, you're an overlord. It doesn't seem appropriate to launch a sneak attack like this, right? Yang Hongwu said. Pang Liren's face turned ugly. If it wasn't for Yang Hongwu blocking the attack, she wouldn't have been able to block it. You blabber. You deserve to die. After saying that, the fantasy world siren launched another attack. A trident appeared in the fantasy world siren's hand. This reminded Yang Hongwu of the so-called Poseidon on Earth. It was the Poseidon's trident in Western mythology. He had to admit that this guy was very strong. In addition to his strange appearance, his weapon and his figure were very similar to that of the so-called sea god. The fantasy sea monster waved its trident, and a ray of light burst out. The power was incomparably strong. It instantly pierced through the space. The ground was torn apart, and the space was shattered. The domineering power instantly rushed over, wanting to destroy the space where Yang Hongwu and the two girls were. Humph! Yang Hongwu coldly snorted. This fantasy sea monster was too arrogant. It thought that it was invincible in its world and could do whatever it wanted. This was simply a joke. Yang Hongwu's big hand grasped, and a saber appeared. This saber was the Hongmeng saber. Raging dragon breaks the sky slash. With Yang Hongwu's angry shout, the Hongmeng saber emitted a dazzling light. A terrifying chi burst out and formed a huge divine dragon. It soared into the sky and met the fantasy sea monster's attack head-on. In an instant, the two domineering forces collided. The small island under Yang Hongwu's feet couldn't withstand such a terrifying impact. Chapter 1732. Indeed, the fantasy world siren had the upper hand in this clash. Although Yang Hongwu managed to block the attack, there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. This was the fantasy world siren's world. Although Yang Hongwu's attack was equally strong and overbearing, the fantasy world siren had a whole world. The world could withstand the impact of the attack, but Yang Hongwu could not. Therefore, Yang Hongwu was injured, but the fantasy world siren was not injured at all. Brother Yang, you're injured." Seeing that Yang Hongwu was injured, the two ladies were worried. They supported Yang Hongwu and asked with concern, "It's nothing serious. It's just a small injury. Don't worry about it." Yang Hongwu smiled faintly and wiped off the blood at the corner of his mouth. He looked at the fantasy world siren in the sky. This guy is too arrogant. He doesn't put me in his eyes at all. Such an arrogant villain would not have a good ending. The fantasy world siren in front of him was just like that. You know what? Fantasy world siren, you're really asking for a beating. Yang Hongwu raised his head to look at the sea demon of fantasy world. Ever since I began cultivating, I've encountered quite a few opponents. Quite a few enemies have said the same thing to me, but all of them ended up in the same way. Even if they die, I'm afraid you'll have the same ending today. You're really arrogant. The fantasy world siren was not angry when he heard Yang Hongwu's words. Instead, he laughed. This human was already defeated by him, and his life was in his hands. Yet, he was still so arrogant and did not put him in his eyes. He was courting death. Even if they were not in his own world, a mere Sir God-realm human was far from being his match. Moreover, this weak human was in his own world. If he wanted to kill him, it would be an easy task. Haha, it's not up to you to decide whether I'm arrogant or not. It's just a sea monster. If you know what's good for you, kneel down and beg for mercy, kowtow, and apologize, and obediently send us out. If you do that, perhaps you'll have a chance to live. If not, only death awaits you. Yang Hongwu said in a clear voice. His eyes were shining with endless confidence. These words made the fantasy world kraken even angrier. Even at this moment, this weak human was still so arrogant, not putting him in his eyes at all. Was he trying to infuriate him? Did he want him to kill them directly without leaving any pain? Did he want a quick death? If that's the case, then he would not do that. Puny human, you've been doing this to anger me, so that I'll give you a quick death, right? The fantasy world sea devil suppressed the fury in her heart and looked at Yang Hongwu and the others as she said, "You're too naive. I won't let you die so easily. I'll make you suffer before killing you. In my world, I want you to live a life worse than death. I want to torture you for thousands of years before I kill you." With that, the fantasy world oceanic demon waved his hand, and a gigantic cage appeared in the sky. This gigantic cage was moving towards the three of them. When the two women saw the huge cage, they felt a terrifying pressure. This made the two women lose their confidence. This huge cage gave them too much pressure, making it hard for them to breathe. Even so, the two women believed that Yang Hongwu, their big brother Yang, would definitely be able to do it. He had a way to deal with it. Boy, wait until you enter my fantasy world cage. You'll know how terrifying I am. It'll be unforgettable. Ha! Ha! The fantasy world siren laughed wildly. It was as if he could see Yang Hongwu and the other two being tortured. He could see them begging for mercy. He could see them. Is that so? Yang Hongwu's face did not change at all. It was as if he did not care about it at all. It was as if he did not see it. At this moment, a ray of light appeared between Yang Hongwu's eyebrows. This ray of light burst out, causing the entire space to tremble. Streaks of black lightning appeared. These streaks of black lightning were filled with a terrifying destructive power. At this moment, the fantasy world siren's body trembled. The black lightning that appeared between Yang Hongwu's eyebrows gave him a terrifying feeling. It was as if it could destroy everything. Fear spread. At this moment, the fantasy world siren's soul was trembling. He suppressed the fear in his heart. He thought to himself, "This human can't be so powerful. He can't kill me. This is an illusion. It's just an illusion. I'm too nervous. It must be me. He's just a monarch god. How can he destroy my inner world? Yes, it must be him. This human is definitely no match for me." However, even though that was what the fantasy world sea demon thought, its soul was still trembling in fear. In the sky, the huge cage could not move at all. Gradually, the fantasy world siren could no longer control the huge cage. It continued to envelop Yang Hongwu. With a loud bang, the cage was hit by the ray of light between Yang Hongwu's eyebrows. It instantly shattered and turned into nothingness. The fantasy world siren trembled. Blood spurted out from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, the fantasy world siren looked at Yang Hongwu with fear. At this moment, he knew what kind of existence he had provoked. In between this young man's eyebrows, there was an eye. It was a terrifying eye. That eye had a terrifying power. It was as if it could destroy his world. At this moment, he regretted to the extreme. Why did he have to provoke such a terrifying human? Human, little sea monster, I told you that if you had knelt down and begged for mercy, kowtowed and apologized, and sent us out, you might have had a chance to live. But you didn't cherish it, so today, you will die. However, it is your honor to die in my hands, Yang Hongwu said loudly. The fantasy world siren was terrified. He looked at Yang Hongwu with extreme fear and shouted, "Human expert, I was wrong. Please spare me. Spare me. At this moment, the fantasy world oceanic demon was no longer as arrogant as before. It was now like a stray dog, crawling on the ground and shivering. Chapter 1733. Human, don't go too far. At this moment, although the fantasy world sea demon was afraid, it knew that it was not a match for Yang Hongwu. The power that exploded out from that, I was causing its world to continuously collapse. This was quite shocking, and it was unable to resist at all. If this continued, its world would be destroyed. Once its world was destroyed, it would be seriously injured. At that time, anyone could easily kill it. It did not want to die. Weren't you very arrogant just now? Yang Hongwu said coldly. I asked you to send us away, but you didn't want to. You wanted to kill us. It's too late to beg for mercy now. As I said, it's too late. Human, don't force me. If you force me, you won't be able to gain any benefits. At worst, we'll die together. At this time, the power of the fantasy world sea demon was completely suppressed. At this moment, it had no way to erupt its power to resist Yang Hongwu's attack. The Dharma Eye of Annihilation had completely restrained it. The strength of the fantasy world sea demon was actually very strong. It was just that it had exhausted too much of its power. In fact, it was unwilling to let Yang Hongwu and the others go because it wanted to devour the power of Yang Hongwu and the others to recover from its injuries and improve its cultivation. It never thought that this time it would kick an iron plate. The strength of the opponent was so strong. It seemed that he was only a 9th level divine monarch, but his combat strength was so terrifying. He was even stronger than the fantasy world sea demon. This was a monster, a peerless monster. In fact, the fantasy world sea demon also knew that the place they were in was actually the space of a peerless expert. The humans who entered here were all geniuses. However, it did not expect Yang Hongwu's strength to be so terrifying. Yang Hongwu heard it and laughed. Die together with me? Do you have the ability to do that? At worst, I'll self-destruct this space. If I die, you won't have an easy time. The fantasy world sea demon seemed to have gone crazy. Yang Hongwu's face changed slightly. If the fantasy world sea demon wanted to self-destruct its world, then it would be troublesome. However, Pang Li and the other girl were still too weak. They couldn't withstand the power of the self-destruction of this space. As for Yang Hongwu himself, he did not have enough power to protect the two women. This was indeed Yang Hongwu's weakness. Fantasy World Siren saw Yang Hongwu's hesitation and knew that she had grasped the key. This human male seemed to care a lot about the two women. If that was the case, it would be good. With a weakness, it meant that he still had a chance to survive. What do you want? Yang Hongwu asked. It's impossible for me to let you go like this. Human, you just want to pass this level of the self-defense divine palace, and I am indeed the key to this level. As long as I open the path to the next level for you, it'll be fine, said the fantasy world sea demon. To me, even though I'll have to pay quite a hefty price, it'll be fine. It's still within the range of what I can bear. If you did that before, I would be very happy. But now, you want me to let you go so easily? I'm afraid that's not possible. Yang Hongwu looked at the fantasy world sea demon and said, That's not enough. It's not enough. Killing the fantasy world sea demon was not a big deal. Besides, the fantasy world sea demon's small world was very weak. Even if he absorbed and refined the small world, it would be impossible for him to reach the half-step divine emperor realm. However, it was impossible for him to let go of the fantasy world siren without getting anything out of it. Don't go too far. If I want to send you out, I'll have to pay a hefty price, said the fantasy world sea demon when he saw that Yang Hongwu was not satisfied. So you don't want to pay the price? Yang Hongwu's face darkened and said, If you don't want to, then forget it. I can leave after killing you. As for the small world that you self-destruct, it will affect me a little, but not much. You don't care about the two women? Asked the fantasy world sea demon when he saw Yang Hongwu's reaction. You don't have to worry about that. I have my ways. You can self-destruct this small world and see how much damage it can do to me, said Yang Hongwu coldly, as if he did not care about the fantasy world sea demon's self-destruction at all. Looking at Yang Hongwu's expression, the fantasy world sea demon could not remain calm. He thought to himself, is this human really not afraid of my self-destructing small world? For some experts, the self-destruction of a small world would not pose a fatal threat to them. However, the two women were too weak. It was impossible for them to survive the impact of the self-destruction of their small worlds. However, the two women were too weak to survive the impact of the self-destruction of their small worlds. The human man was very mysterious. What if he had a powerful trump card in his hand? If he really had a powerful trump card, wouldn't he have died in vain? The fantasy world sea demon did not dare to take the risk. After all, this was a matter of life and death. Even if he had to pay a high price, as long as he could survive, it was worth it. You, human, what do you want? The fantasy world sea demon suppressed the anger in his heart and looked at Yang Hongwu. Your illusion technique, said Yang Hongwu while looking at the fantasy world sea demon. The fantasy world sea demon's ability to transform his small world was really powerful. If he had not analyzed the origin spiritual qi, he would have been confused. If he could learn this illusion technique, it would be of great help to Yang Hongwu. If he could cultivate this illusion technique to the extreme, he would be able to turn the illusion into reality. If he could reach that level, it would be really terrifying. It could be said that he could create something out of nothing. How strong would his cultivation be to be able to do that? Impossible. The fantasy world sea demon shook his head and said, "This is my natal superpower. I can't give it to anyone else. This is an inheritance from the bloodline. It is awakened. Other than the fantasy world sea demon clan, no other clan can master it. Yes. Apart from this superpower, you have nothing else that I want." Yang Hongwu shook his head and said, "I have one more thing. I got it after killing a human genius last time. Maybe you will like it." At this time, the fantasy world sea demon hurriedly said, it was true that he could not pass the illusion technique to others. However, he was afraid that Yang Hongwu would kill him at all costs. That would be troublesome. Chapter 1734. It was a special bee skin. There was a familiar aura on the bee's skin. It was the aura of the common life Great Seal. Therefore, Yang Hongwu was very excited. The common life Great Seal was too important for Yang Hongwu. After so long, Yang Hongwu had not obtained the complete common life Great Seal. For Yang Hongwu, his cultivation was too weak. Compared to Zetian, it was really not enough. After all, Zetian's cultivation had already reached a terrifying level. He was at least at the Emperor realm. Yang Hongwu had not even reached the half-step divine Emperor realm. If he returned to the divine domain, he would not be able to defeat Zetian. At that time, he would not be able to protect his woman. He might not even be able to protect his own life. Therefore, Yang Hongwu could not wait to increase his cultivation. He wanted to reach the Emperor realm in the shortest time possible. However, it was extremely difficult to increase his cultivation level. Moreover, he wanted to reach the Emperor realm from the divine Emperor realm. It was impossible to achieve through ordinary means. Therefore, he only had a few shortcuts to increase his cultivation level. For example, he could find one of the 8 great divine talismans. The possibility of that was too small. He had been searching for the 8 great divine talismans for so long, but he only managed to obtain some information. He did not even manage to find a replica of the 8 great divine talismans. Therefore, the possibility of finding the 8 great divine talismans was not high. The second one was the common life Great Seal. If he could find the complete common life Great Seal, his strength would increase greatly. As long as he could obtain the complete common life Great Seal and refine it, Yang Hongwu believed that his cultivation level would increase by leaps and bounds. If he could obtain the complete common life Great Seal, he would be able to reach the Emperor realm in the shortest time possible. After Yang Hongwu obtained the fragment of the common people's Great Seal from the common people's continent, his strength had greatly increased. However, it was still far from enough when he reached the deity realm, especially after he found out that Zetian was the lord of the demon region. He became even more depressed. Back then, Zetian had been defeated by him. But now, Zetian's strength was so terrifying. Yang Hongwu had not even seen Zetian in person, but he could already feel the terror of Zetian. If he were to fight against Zetian with his current cultivation, it would be no different from seeking death. That was why Yang Hongwu was so focused on improving his cultivation. Yang Hongwu guessed that there should be a fragment of the common life Great Seal in the divine realm. As for where it was, Yang Hongwu didn't know. However, he had never imagined that he would stumble upon something related to the life Great Seal after arriving at the Dark Knight continent and entering the War God Temple. Although this piece of beast skin wasn't the life seal, the aura of the life seal on it couldn't be concealed. Moreover, this piece of beast skin wasn't that simple. It was definitely the skin of a powerful exotic beast. Its strength wasn't below the peak divine emperor realm. It might even surpass the divine emperor realm. How could the information recorded on such a piece of beast skin be so simple? I got this piece of animal skin from that human genius. There are some runes on it that I don't understand. These runes should record some special information. Maybe it's a map. The map should record some treasure or the location of a supreme treasure. If it's true, then it's true that it's a treasure or a supreme treasure. If I can decipher it, I'll gain great benefits. However, I can't leave here and I can't decipher the secret. The fantasy world sea monster saw Yang Hongwu staring at the beast skin and heaved a sigh of relief. As long as the human in front of him was interested in it, it would be good. The information recorded on this piece of beast skin might be very precious. But in fact, it was of little value to the fantasy world sea monster. It would be a pity to throw it away. After all, it couldn't leave here. Its strength was far from enough. Yang Hongwu's heart was stirred up by this piece of beast skin. However, on the surface, Yang Hongwu didn't show the slightest excitement. It's just a piece of beast skin. Do you think you can get rid of me? Yang Hongwu said, this piece of beast skin is indeed from a powerful exotic beast. However, it's just a piece of beast skin. As for the information recorded on it, who knows what it is? Yang Hongwu's words made the fantasy world sea monster speechless. However, it couldn't refute him. After all, he was telling the truth. The information recorded on the beast skin was invaluable to some people. However, to others, it was worthless, just like the fantasy world sea monster. Moreover, even if they knew what was recorded on the beast skin, what if it recorded the location of a supreme treasure? So what if they knew, if it wasn't powerful enough, it would be impossible to obtain it? However, although the fantasy world sea monster thought this, it wasn't stupid enough to say it out loud. I extracted the memories of that human genius. This beast skin contains information about a supreme treasure. I think it's called the Great Seal of Life. Yes, it's the Great Seal of Life. The fantasy world sea demons said, it's an extremely powerful treasure. If we can obtain that treasure, we'll be able to obtain it. If you can obtain it, you'll have the strength of a divine emperor. Hearing this, Yang Hongwu's heart skipped a beat. However, he said, so what? Even if what you said is true, and this piece of beast skin recorded the information of the supreme treasure called the Life Great Seal, and even its specific location, so what? Who can guarantee that I'll be able to obtain it? Fantasy world, sea monster, fantasy world, sea monster. If you want to use this insignificant beast skin to dismiss me, then you're too naive. If you don't take out something that satisfies me, I won't let you go. The fantasy world sea monster sensed the killing intent in Yang Hongwu's eyes. He hesitated for a while and then said, all right, I have something else. I was saving it to break through to the late divine emperor realm. If this thing can't satisfy your greed, then I will give it to you. If that's the case, I can only choose to perish together with you. After saying that, the fantasy world Kraken reluctantly took out a box from his interspatial ring. The box was engraved with mysterious runes. Yang Hongwu recognized these runes. They were sealing runes, ancient and powerful. Moreover, the material of the box was also very precious. This box could definitely be considered an extraordinary treasure. Chapter 1735. Oh no, I've been tricked. Yang Hongwu suddenly felt that something was wrong. He didn't expect that the fantasy world sea demon would dare to trick him at this time. He could only blame himself for being a little careless. Yang Hongwu was furious. He instantly activated the space technique and moved away. Boom! The moment Yang Hongwu moved away, the thing in the box finally exploded. The huge impact destroyed everything within 100 feet radius. Under this overbearing power, nothing could survive. Everything turned into nothingness. Although Yang Hongwu dodged most of the attack, his shoulder was still severely injured. This attack made Yang Hongwu lose feeling in one of his arms. Blood flowed out from his arm. Yang Hongwu felt lucky. If he didn't have the secret technique of void travel and dodged in time, he would have died. He was afraid that he would have lost his life. Careless. He was really careless this time. How was it possible? How are you still alive? Seeing Yang Hongwu appear hundreds of meters away and alive, the fantasy world siren's eyes widened. She was terrified. She thought that Yang Hongwu was dead for sure, but she didn't expect that he would be able to survive. This terrifying attack couldn't kill Yang Hongwu. Instead, it let him live. Only one of his arms was injured. Terrifying. This young man was too terrifying. Even an Imperial Emperor Realm expert would be severely injured if he didn't die under the impact of this terrifying power. However, this young man was still alive and well. Regret. At this moment, the fantasy world sea demon knew that this time he was in big trouble. Yang Hongwu had already spared his life before, but he wanted to kill Yang Hongwu. This time, Yang Hongwu wouldn't let him go. At this time, it was useless to regret. Sorry to disappoint you. Yang Hongwu looked at the fantasy world sea demon and said coldly, "Thanks to you, this is the first time I've been so seriously injured in the war-stopping Divine Palace. You were so close to killing me. Unfortunately, you were so close. If I didn't have the secret technique to travel through space, I wouldn't be able to kill you. If it wasn't for my strong physical body, I would be dead by now." The fantasy world kraken took a deep breath, looked at Yang Hongwu and said, "You are really lucky. This time, I can't kill you, but I won't let you have an easy time. Let's die together." After saying that, the fantasy world siren's chi began to rise. His whole body emitted a violent chi. He knew that Yang Hongwu would not let him go. Since he was going to die, it was a good choice to die together with him. He didn't deny that Yang Hongwu was very powerful. He was unbelievably powerful. He was caught off guard, and such a terrifying attack was not able to kill him. This was beyond his expectation. However, although he had avoided the fatal attack, he was still injured. He should not be able to stop the fantasy world sea demon from perishing together with him. "You want to die together with me?" Yang Hongwu snorted coldly. "Naive. You are too naive. If it was before, maybe you could do it. But now it is a fool's dream." After saying that, Yang Hongwu moved his mind, and a formation appeared in this space. This formation immediately isolated the fantasy world sea demon from this small world. This formation was the upgraded version of the isolation formation. This formation was extremely powerful. Although it did not have any attacking power, it could isolate the heavenly way and even the great way. As soon as this formation appeared, the fantasy world sea demon lost contact with this small world. What is going on? The fantasy world sea demon was terrified. He shouted, How did you do it?" The fantasy world sea demon found that he had lost contact with the small world. This meant that he could no longer communicate with the origin energy of the small world. Even if he wanted to self-destruct the small world and perish together with Yang Hongwu, it was impossible. This method was too powerful and terrifying. He had silently set up a formation to isolate the fantasy world sea demon from the small world. It was terrifying. This way, he was in despair. This time, he was really going to die. There was no chance for him to live. Yang Hongwu would never let him go. "You schemed against me and wanted to kill me. Why do you have to do this?" Yang Hongwu looked at the fantasy world sea demon and said, "I didn't want to kill you at first, but you forced me to do it. Do you really think that I have no other way?" The fantasy world sea demon was in despair after being cut off from the small world. At this moment, the fantasy world sea demon knew that he was going to die. He looked at Yang Hongwu and said, "I know that you won't let me go. Can you tell me why I died? How did you cut me off from my small world? There's no harm in telling you. I set up a formation, an isolation formation. Yang Hongwu said, in this formation, no matter how strong you are, you will be cut off from the outside world. Even if you are the master of heavenly way, you will still be isolated, unless you can break this formation with your own strength. Otherwise, you won't be able to sense the power outside. What a fine isolating array. Truly impressive. I didn't expect that you, a mere 9th-level divine Lord Human Martial Artist, are actually also such a powerful array master. You're the most outstanding and most powerful genius that I've encountered in so many years. If I could do it all over again, I absolutely wouldn't oppose you. The fantasy world sea demon knew that he was going to die, but he didn't give up. He wanted to fight to the death. Come, human, attack. I know I'm not your opponent, but I won't let you kill me. You want to kill me? But it's not that easy. Let me see how strong you are. After saying that, the fantasy world sea demon transformed into his true form. He was a huge sea beast with a ferocious face. His huge body was like a mountain. His body exuded a powerful aura. The two women were weak, and they were forced to retreat under the powerful pressure. With a thought, Yang Hongwu waved his hand. An array of light fell on the two women, protecting them. Then, a saber appeared in Yang Hongwu's hand. It was a Grand Mist saber, one of Yang Hongwu's strongest weapons. Chapter 1736. In an instant, Yang Hongwu took the initiative to launch an attack. Yang Hongwu's mental strength exploded as he slashed out with the saber. Yin Yang Soul Lock Curse. The soul attack broke through the fantasy world sea demon's sea of consciousness. The fantasy world sea demon did not expect the human in front of him to have a soul attack. Before he could react, his soul was injured. Then, Yang Hongwu's Hongmeng saber tore through his defense and slashed his body. When the fantasy world sea demon died, he was filled with despair. He couldn't believe that he couldn't even last a single round. He died so miserably. In fact, with the fantasy world siren's strength, it would not have been so easy for Yang Hongwu to kill it. However, the fantasy world siren was too careless. It did not expect Yang Hongwu to have a secret soul attack that could easily tear apart its defense. This was why Yang Hongwu was able to kill it so easily. He had easily killed him. After the fantasy world sea demon was killed, Yang Hongwu found himself in front of passage. Yang Hongwu was speechless. What the F***CK, he was sent out. He was sent out of the fantasy world sea demon's world. Yang Hongwu had a premonition that the fantasy world sea demon was not dead yet. Yang Hongwu was familiar with the passage in front of him. It was the passage to the next level of the test. Originally, Yang Hongwu wanted to devour the fantasy world sea demon's strength after killing it. In addition, the origin energy of the fantasy world sea demon's small world could not help him reach the half-step divine emperor realm. It should not be a problem for him to reach the peak 9th layer divine monarch realm. However, after killing the fantasy world oceanic demon, he was teleported out. It was a pain in the ass for him to be so depressed. Although it was frustrating, there was nothing he could do. However, it was fortunate that this time, it wasn't like he didn't gain anything. He even obtained the beast skin that contained information about the common people's Great Seal. Brother Yang, will we pass the test? Pang Li Juan asked. Yes, we have passed the test of the 3rd floor. Yang Hongwu nodded. It's a pity that I didn't get the illusory world sea demon's Niden. There should be a lot of benefits on the illusory world sea demon's body. If I knew that I would be teleported out after killing the illusory world sea demon, I would have done it. Let's not kill that guy. Big Brother Yang, are we directly entering the 4th floor now? Pang Li asked. There's no rush. Let me see what secrets this fantasy world sea demon's hide holds. As Yang Hongwu spoke, he took out the beast skin that the fantasy world sea demon had exchanged for his life. There were restrictive runes on it that ordinary people wouldn't be able to see through. Furthermore, if they wanted to be strong, they would be able to see through them. If they try to break this barrier, they would most likely destroy this piece of animal skin, which would not be worth it. After all, this was a treasure map related to a supreme artifact. No one was willing to let this treasure map go to waste. Big Brother Yang, is there a big secret on this animal skin? Seeing that Yang Hanwu valued the animal skin so much, Pang Liren asked curiously. Yes, there's a big secret recorded on this animal skin. It's my opportunity. It's the thing that I value the most. I didn't expect that I would get it from the illusory world sea demon. However, it's not easy to get what I want. Yang Hanwu took a deep breath and took out 9 pills. 9 pills. These 9 pills were none other than the limit-breaking pills. Yang Hanwu took out 9 restriction-breaking pills to break the barrier on a piece of animal skin. It was obvious that Yang Hanwu valued this piece of animal skin very much. Yang Hanwu didn't want any accidents to happen, because if there were any accidents during the process of breaking the barrier, the animal skin would be destroyed. If the animal skin was destroyed, the information on it would be lost. This was something that Yang Hanwu couldn't accept. After all, the life seal was just too important to Yang Hanwu. It was just too important. He couldn't allow any accidents to happen to it. If he lost any information about the great life seal this time, then he didn't know when he would be able to find any more information about it. Therefore, he couldn't afford to lose this piece of animal skin. Big Brother Yang, Pang Liren was about to ask when she saw Yang Hanwu take out the pills. However, Pang Lijuan pulled her hand and stopped her from speaking. Don't disturb Big Brother Yang. He's trying to decipher the secret on the animal skin. Yang Hanwu performed a series of hand seals and executed a series of hand seals. 9 limit-breaking pills were instantly unleashed. A powerful force combined with Yang Hanwu's hand seals, resulting in a brilliant glow that encapsulated the ancient beast hide. In the next moment, the animal skin underwent a huge change. The animal skin turned golden. The runes on it turned into a map. A location was clearly recorded on the map. Boundless Realm, 10,000 Divine Mountain, Tomb of the Divine King. Taking a deep breath, Yang Hanwu memorized the information on the animal skin. Then, Yang Hanwu put the animal skin away. Big Brother Yang, what's recorded on the animal skin? Pang Liren asked. Boundless Realm, 10,000 Divine Mountain. Yang Hanwu said, there's something I need there. Unfortunately, I don't know where the Boundless Realm is. It should be a world of its own, a great world. It's not in the war-stopping Divine Temple. There should be a passage to the Boundless Realm here. This left Yang Hanwu in a dilemma. It was a great world. He wanted to return to the Divine Domain, but he also wanted to find a fragment of the Life Seal to improve his cultivation. If he wasn't strong enough and returned to the Divine Domain, Yang Hanwu wouldn't have any chance of winning against Tion. However, if he went to the Divine Domain, if he didn't return to the Divine Realm, but instead went to the vast expanse world to search for the fragment of the Great Seal of the Common Life, he would be wasting time. In that case, once he found the fragment of the Great Seal of the Common Life and returned to the Divine Realm, he didn't know how things would develop. If something happened to Hu Xiao, and the others, Yang Hanwu wouldn't be able to accept it. Therefore, Yang Hanwu was in a dilemma. Taking a deep breath, Yang Hanwu threw these thoughts to the back of his mind. Let's not worry about that for now. Right now, the most important thing was to pass the first test of the war-stopping Divine Temple. After all, no matter which world he went to, he had to pass the test of the war-stopping Divine Temple. Perhaps there was a way to solve this problem in the war-stopping Divine Temple. Big Brother Yang, what's wrong? Pang Lijuan asked with concern. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.